Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto wears Haku's mask part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. A young woman wearing a pink kimono and carrying a basket was walking through the forests of Nami no Kuni while humming to herself. She had long black hair that went to her waist, skin as white as snow and chocolate brown eyes that could warm the coldest heart. Ironic, given what her clan was famous for. For this woman was none other than Yuki Haku, last surviving member of the famed Yuki clan of Kirigakure no Sato and accomplice of the infamous and fearsome Kirigakure no Kijin, Momochi Zabuza. Though Zabuza-sama is about as fearsome as a wet noodle right now, Haku frowned at the thought. Zabuza had been injured during his battle with the Konoha shinobi Hatake Kakashi. Haku unconsciously tightened her grip on her basket. Oh, Haku knew who he was. Zabuza-sama had drilled into her head the who's who of shinobi from the Big Five, as well as a couple of nukenin that they were to avoid at all costs. Haku mentally ran over Kakashi's bingo book information. Hatake Kakashi aka Sharingan no Kakashi and the Kopi Ninja. Member of Konoha's shinobi forces, Jonin rank. Rumored to have copied over 1,000 jutsu. Son of Konoha's Shiroi Kiba, Hatake Sakumo, and student of the Yandame Hokage, Namikaze Minato. Skilled in all three disciplines but with a specialization in ninjutsu. A rank threat, proceed with caution. If it had just been Kakashi, Haku bit her lip, then Zabuza-sama and I could have taken him. But the bingo book made no mention of him having a squad of genin. Hatake Kakashi's squad of genin consisted of a girl with long bubblegum pink hair wearing a red cheongsam dress, a boy with raven hair styled like the back end of a duck, wearing a high-collared blue shirt with white shorts, and a boy with spiky bright blonde hair wearing an obnoxiously orange jumpsuit. Kakashi himself sported spiky gray hair and was wearing a green flak jacket with a long-sleeved black shirt and black pants. From Haku's vantage point up in the trees, those three seemed like your typical wet-behind-the-ears genin who would have folded the second their sensei was captured. And when Zabuza-sama had trapped Kakashi with his Suiro no Jutsu, water prison technique, that's what she thought was going to happen. But those genin, specifically the two boys, and especially the blonde one, surprised her. The blonde had charged at Zabuza-sama's Mizu Bunshin, water clone, and had received a foot to his guts for his efforts. He was kicked so hard that his hide was unraveled from his head and separated from its owner, landing on the ground where the water clone stepped on it. Haku thought that surely the blonde would have seen how outmatched he was and run, and for a moment it looked like he would. But then he charged the clone again, and the same result occurred. What was that saying about insanity? Yet he got up again, somehow recovering his hide from underneath the clone's foot. He's determined, I'll give him that much, Haku thought as she watched the blonde struggle to his feet and tie his hide back around his forehead. But Zabuza-sama only has so much patience. If the blonde charges again, Zabuza-sama will kill him. The blonde charged a third time, but this time it was different. He had summoned clones, but not just any type of clones, solid clones. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, shadow clone technique? How does a genin have the chakra to use Kage Bunshin? And so many too? Haku watched with wide eyes as the blonde and a dozen shadow clones charged Zabuza-sama's water clone with kunai drawn. They all pounced upon the water clone, seeking to skewer it. Yet even with only 1/10 of the original strength, the water clone dispelled the shadow clones with a single swing of its Kubikuri Bocho and sent the original flying backwards. Even with more of him, the result was still the same. Haku relaxed slightly on her perch. The blonde had surprised her with his knowledge of Kage Bunshin, but even then his efforts were for naught. She didn't imagine that the blonde had any more tricks up his sleeve. A thought that she and, unknown to her at the time, many others in the future would have about the blonde, only for all of them to be proven wrong. Haku watched the real blonde rummage through his backpack as he was being launched backwards. He found what he was looking for and tossed it to his raven-haired teammate. It was a collapsed windmill shuriken. The raven-haired boy unfolded the shuriken, leapt into the air and threw it towards the water clone. A windmill shuriken? How do they expect to use that to defeat the clone? Haku was confused, until she watched the shuriken curve around the clone and towards the boy's true target, the real Zabuza that was standing on the lake and maintaining his water prison around Kakashi. Clever, she complimented the genin. Go for the caster, and you disrupt the technique. However, Haku grinned behind her oinen mask as she watched Zabuza catch the shuriken in his free hand. Zabuza-sama wasn't one of the Kiri no Shinobigatana Shishinin Shu for nothing. It will take more than that to defeat him. And even when a second windmill shuriken appeared from the shadow of the first one, the second shuriken going for Zabuza's legs, Haku was not worried. She was confident that her Zabuza-sama would prevail. Her confidence was confirmed as she watched Zabuza-sama hop over the second shuriken, all the while maintaining his control over his water prison technique. A good plan and a valiant effort, but there's a reason Zabuza-sama is in the bingo book and these genin are not. Haku felt a surge of pride in her master at that moment, as she watched the, surprisingly, skilled genin's last, desperate attempt shoot underneath and behind Zabuza. A surge of pride which was quickly replaced by shock when that second shuriken exploded in a puff of white smoke to reveal the blonde genin with a kunai in his hand. A kunai he proceeded to throw at Zabuza's head. How? Haku watched, dumbfounded, as the kunai raced towards Zabuza's head, her mind trying to explain what she just saw. Kawarimi no jutsu, replacement technique? No, he was too far away and the shuriken was moving too fast. Haku absently noted that Zabuza had chosen to release Kakashi rather than have a kunai buried in his forehead, though Zabuza did suffer a cut to his cheek as he dodged the kunai. How did he do it? Haku mulled over the possibilities as she leapt to a tree closer to the shoreline, making sure she kept a close eye on Zabuza's fight with Kakashi, a fight Zabuza was losing. He was too far to replace himself, and as far as I know there is no bloodline that allows you to teleport. Haku focused on the blonde boy who was treading water as both Jonin cast the Suryuden no Jutsu, water dragon missile technique, using their chakra to shape the lake water into towering, snake-like dragons which they launched at one another. Since the boy is treading water, it's safe to assume that he doesn't know water walking, which rules out the chakra control needed for summoning. Haku narrowed her eyes. The answer was on the tip of her tongue, but it was absurd. As absurd as Zabuza-sama, a former Kiri-nin, struggling against Kakashi, a Konoha-nin, in a duel of water techniques. And yet, as the two dragons crashed and exploded into a shower of water, a sign that both men were equally skilled, there was only one answer. The only other technique that generates white smoke is when a person dispels a Henji no Jutsu, transformation technique. But to henge yourself and allow your teammate to throw you at an enemy is simply. Haku's eyes widened as she muttered, insane. This boy, a genin, let his teammate throw him at Zabuza-sama. Haku looked upon the blonde boy in awe and a slight amount of admiration. He directly put himself in harm's way, all to save his sensei. Haku was so lost in her thoughts that she was nearly swept up by the great deluge of water from Kakashi's Daibakufu no Jutsu, great waterfall technique. Thankfully for herself, and Zabuza-sama, she was able to avoid the devastating technique. She tree-hopped from the edge of the lake to where Zabuza-sama was blasted to. She arrived just in time to stop Kakashi from finishing Zabuza-sama with a kunai by throwing her saban through Zabuza's neck and placing him in a near-death state. Kakashi checked the body on the ground for a pulse, and though Haku was confident that he would find none, it wasn't the first time she had had to kill Zabuza-sama in such a fashion. Today had been a day full of surprises, so she decided to fill the dead air and hopefully distract the Konoha Jonin from looking closer at the corpse. Thank you for your help, she said in a monotone that helped her voice sound androgynous. I hope you don't mind my interference, but I really wanted the honor of taking down one of Kiri's more infamous sons. Kakashi looked up towards Haku with narrowed eyes. Your mask, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's an Oinin mask from Kirigakure. You were hunting Zabuza? Haku nodded. Yes. Our corps had heard rumors that Zabuza had been operating around these parts, so I was sent to investigate, and if given the opportunity, terminate. Haku absently noted that the female genin shivered when she said terminate. Kakashi let out a hymn in response. Though he looked relaxed, Haku could see that his body was still coiled like a spring, ready to strike at the slightest threat. I thought Kiri was still in the midst of a civil war, Kakashi began casually. Why would the Mizukage send out Oinin, especially one as talented as you appear to be, after a man like Zabuza? Thank you for the compliment, Hataki Kakashi-san. Haku gave a minor bow. It means much coming from a man of your stature. As for why Yandeme-sama sent me after Momochi Zabuza, I was sent for what he bears. Haku gestured towards Zabuza's blade that was strapped to his back. Ah, Kubikuribocho, Kakashi said, sounding slightly sheepish. That is a good reason to hunt down Zabuza. But what if Konoha wanted to take possession of the blade? Kakashi asked with steel in his tone. Oh? Haku's eyes narrowed into slits behind her mask. How dare he think of taking Zabuza-sama's blade? She was tempted to throw her samban through Kakashi's damnable Sharingan, but a confrontation with Hataki Kakashi, even an exhausted one, would waste time. Precious time. Time needed to remove the samban from Zabuza-sama's neck before any permanent damage could occur. Thankfully, her reprieve came in the form of a waterlogged genin wearing orange. What's going on here? The blonde shouted as he pointed an accusing finger at her. Who are you? Relax, Naruto, Kakashi sighed as he stood up from next to Zabuza's body and walked over to the yelling blonde. He's not an enemy. That's not what I asked? I mean, what I mean is, he killed Zabuza, who wasn't a pushover, but he still got taken out by a guy who's only about my age. Like it was nothing. What, do we suck or something? What's up with that? Naruto finished his rant. Haku could tell by his tone of voice that he was still hyped up on adrenaline. Naruto, Kakashi ruffled his ragged, ruffian student's hair. I can see how frustrating it can be to see someone as young as you who happens to be stronger than me. Haku doesn't know why she said it, but she decided to offer the blonde some encouragement and compliment him on his efforts. Do not be so down, Genin-san. I watched your battle with Zabuza and saw how your actions were instrumental in defeating him. Not many shinobi would allow themselves to be thrown at a superior opponent, let alone volunteer to do so. Naruto blushed and scratched his right cheek with his index finger. He didn't know what to say. It was rare when someone complimented him. Hell, he could count on both hands with digits to spare how many people gave him a genuine compliment. Still, Hokage Gigi had taught him to always thank people for saying nice things. Well, I had to do something to save Kakashi-sensei, and that was the best thing I could come up with. Naruto gave Haku a foxy grin. Thanks, Oinen-san. Haku couldn't help but let out a giggle that she tried to hide behind her hand. She thought Naruto looked cute with his whisker marks and blush. Don't mention it, Genin-san. Though I might suggest you learn water walking before going up against an opponent like Zabuza again. Kakashi let out a groan at that statement and muttered under his breath, water walking, chakra control. How did I forget to teach them chakra control? As fun as this has been, I really must be going, Haku said as she used the Shunshin no Jutsu, body flicker technique, to disappear in a swirl of leaves from up on her branch to appear next to Zabuza's corpse in an instant. You're going to take care of the corpse? Naruto asked. Haku nodded. Though Naruto's question, or rather the knowledge needed to ask said question, surprised Kakashi. Naruto, Kakashi got Naruto's attention. How do you know that he was going to get rid of the corpse? In fact, how did you even recognize him as an Oinin? Oh, that's easy, Kakashi-sensei. When I was younger I would hang out from time to time in Hokage Gigi's office and sometimes members from Umbu or the Oinin Butai would stop by to report. I asked Gigi who the guys in the funny masks were and he told me? Naruto explained to his sensei as if he was explaining the weather. I see. Kakashi's sweat dropped. Sometimes he forgot how close his student was to Sandaime-sama. Although Naruto rubbed his chin and squinted his eyes into slits, I thought the rule for Oinin was to destroy the body where it dropped. That is the rule, but every rule, like every law, has some exceptions. Like when an Oinin is surrounded by potentially dangerous shinobi who have something to gain from the corpse-like information or, Haku looked towards Kakashi, something he possesses. Kakashi sheepishly rubbed the back of his head and gave Haku his patented eye smile. Message received. Say goodbye to the Oinin, Naruto. Goodbye, Oinin-san. Thank you for the compliment and the advice. I'll ask Kakashi-sensei to teach us water walking later. Naruto flashed her his patented foxy grin as he waved her goodbye. Kakashi's shoulders slumped, though whether it was due to his current exhaustion or his future mental exhaustion of having to deal with a hyperactive Naruto pestering him for training was up for debate. Haku placed her hand on Zabuza's chest and body flickered away. Haku paused, her brown eyes flicking to her left, catching something out of the ordinary. A tree nearby had been scored with notches leading up to its top. The notches looked like they had been made by a kunai. Why would somebody tree-walking exercise? What other ninja? Haku's eyes widened. The only ninja I can think of that would be doing the tree-walking exercise are those genin, meaning Zabuza was outsmarted by a genin who couldn't even tree-walk. The laughter that bubbled forth from Haku after that realization filled the forest. It took a few minutes for her laughter to die down, but even then a few giggles still escaped her lips. She took a deep breath, to calm herself, then refocused on the tree. Whoever was using this tree has made tremendous progress for only a few days, she thought as she ran her fingers over its rough bark. I wonder, was it Naruto or his raven-haired teammate that did this? Though I know which one Zabuza-sama would prefer it to be. Haku released a sigh at her last thought, because it reminded her of the conversation that she had with Zabuza-sama shortly after departing from the Konoha Shinobi. She had carried her Zabuza-sama's body about 2 miles away to a clearing where she took Kubikura Bocho from his back and stabbed it into the dirt. She then laid out his body flat on its back on the ground. Haku knelt down next to Zabuza and traced her fingers across the two saban in his neck. First, she murmured, taking out a scroll from within her kimono sash and rolling it open on the ground, I'll cut off his bandages. Haku picked up a pair of scissors from the scroll and brought them towards Zabuza's neck bandages. Only for Zabuza's hand to shoot forward and clamp down on Haku's hand. No need, Haku. I'll do it myself. Zabuza groaned as he sat up and yanked one of the saban from his neck with a wet spurt. Be careful, Zabuza-sama, Haku warned. If you remove those in any other way you really will kill yourself. You're a sadist, Haku, Zabuza rasped, as he removed the other saban. Always the neck with you. I pity your future boyfriend. Zabuza-sama. Haku whined as she waved her arms up and down. Don't tease me. You're gonna need one if you want to revive your clan. Zabuza chuckled as he lay back on the ground, letting out a groan dripping with exhaustion as he did so. He looked up at Haku. Take off your mask, Haku. The thing makes you look ghoulish. This ghoulish mask, Haku teased as she took off the mask, revealing her soft face and chocolate brown eyes, has helped save your life on numerous occasions. Zabuza rolled his eyes, deciding to let the comment go. What happened after you skewered me? Zabuza-sama. Haku pouted at his phrasing. Skewer was such a violent word. I spoke with Hataki. And? Zabuza raised his non-existent eyebrow. He asked why I was here when Kiri is still in the midst of its civil war, and I told him that I was ordered by Yagura to see if I could recover your blade. Zabuza grunted. Good answer. Probably even true to some extent. Though I don't imagine that a man like Sharingan no Kakashi would let a comment like that go. Haku shook her head, causing the two bangs that framed her face to tickle her cheeks. He did not. He asked, what if Konoha wanted to take possession of the blade? Zabuza scowled, as his right arm unconsciously drifted towards his sword. Your response? I didn't have a chance to, Haku told Zabuza. We were interrupted by the blonde genin, Naruto I think his name was. He came storming up and started pointing and yelling at me for coming in at the last second. I believe that he was still coming down from the adrenaline. That gaki, I can't believe he tricked me. Zabuza sneered, his version of a pout. He used a henge to turn himself into a windmill shuriken and had his teammate throw him at me. Zabuza finished, sounding incredulous. He turned to the side and muttered, still, the plan took guts. I'll give the kid that much. Uzumaki Naruto, I thought Uzumakis all had red hair. What was that, Zabuza-sama? Haku asked as she finished rolling up her scroll and placing it back in her sash. Zabuza turned back to Haku. It's nothing, what else happened? After Naruto-san interrupted me, Kakashi went to console his student, and I gave Naruto a compliment for his efforts against you. Haku giggled as she recalled the boy's blush after her compliment. The boy must not be used to receiving praise. She wondered, are those whiskers real? Ugh, sadist Haku, the wound's still fresh. Zabuza covered his eyes with his forearm. How will my pride ever recover? There, Haku patted Zabuza's shoulder. I'm sure you'll get another chance for payback once you recover. Speaking of, Zabuza removed his forearm from his eyes. How long is it going to take me to recover? 2 weeks, barring any complications. Zabuza frowned behind his bandages. 2 weeks? Any way to speed up my recovery? Haku's lips quirked. I recall seeing a couple of nice healing herbs in one of the nearby forests. They'll help speed up your recovery by a few days. Although, Haku narrowed her eyes at Zabuza like a mother who knew that their child was going to misbehave. If I get those herbs, then you can't do anything strenuous for the rest of your convalescence. Otherwise their healing properties will become poisonous. Zabuza closed his eyes and mulled it over. If we wait too long, the chances of a real Kiri Oinen showing up for my sword increases, or heavens forbid, another one of the 7 showing up. I'd rather hand it over to Konoha Shinobi than have it in Yagura's slimy hands. Though I don't trust the midget, Gato, as far as I can throw him. I've seen the way he leers at Haku. And who knows if he'll try anything when I'm recovering. Can I risk that? Zabuza turned to Haku. I'll make my decision when we return back to base. Anything else worth mentioning from your conversation with Hataki and the Gaki? Haku tapped her chin with her index finger, thinking. The Gaki, Naruto, he did make reference to spending time around the Hokage when he was younger. Haku laughed as she recalled what he called the Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, the current Kami no Shinobi. He referred to him as Hokage Jiji. Zabuza narrowed his eyes at that bit of information. Interesting. The boy could prove useful if he's that close to the Hokage. Zabuza was piecing together a plan in his head. If the boy is close to the Hokage, then he could be a valuable hostage, or maybe. Haku, how old did you think the Gaki was? Around 13, Haku answered, sounding confused by the question. About 2 years younger than you then? Yes, Haku narrowed her eyes. She didn't know why he was asking, but she had a feeling she wouldn't like where this conversation was going. And what did you think of him? Zabuza asked, trying to sound casual. At first glance? Not much. Though he did surprise me when he used Kage Bunshin, shadow clones, and his plan to save Kakashi was as brave as it was insane. Yes. Zabuza nodded in agreement. He shows great potential. And what did you think of him physically? He was a bit on the short side. Haku really didn't like where this conversation was going. Zabuza scoffed. I'm sure he'll grow a bit. He just started puberty. In fact, it wasn't until I was around 15 when I started. Zabuza-sama, Haku interrupted Zabuza and gave him a saccharine smile. The temperature began to drop as Haku's killing intent was rising. What are you planning? Zabuza repressed a shudder. Sometimes Haku was scarier to him than Kisame, and that man fed people to his sword. But he soldiered on. Well, Haku, as your guardian, I only want what's best for you, and I feel like it would be best if you went out and met somebody. In other words, I think it's time you got yourself a boyfriend. Though she couldn't see it, Haku was sure Zabuza-sama's shark-like teeth were on full display and a full grin underneath his bandages. A resounding slap echoed throughout the forest and sent birds fleeing from their nests and to the skies. Haku left the scored tree and walked a bit farther. The clearing with the medicinal herbs was just a couple of minutes away from there. The herbs would speed up Zabuza's recovery by converting his chakra to medical chakra, ensuring that his wounds would heal at a rapid pace. However, medical chakra requires the greatest of control, like a surgeon performing open-heart surgery. One slip up and you nick an artery and the patient bleeds to death. The same can be said for using medical ninjutsu. Should you surge your chakra and break that delicate balance, you risk crippling or killing your patients. Therefore, it's imperative that Zabuza-sama not be subject to any battle for a week after administration of the herbs, otherwise. Haku smacked both her cheeks to get rid of the negative thoughts. Zabuza-sama will be fine. He'll recover before Gato's deadline. Haku snarled, Gato, that slime. It was a day after their confrontation with Kakashi and his squad, and Haku was still giving Zabuza-sama the cold shoulder. How dare he? She thought as she furiously chopped up some carrots to put into a soup, her knife slightly biting into the cutting board. I am not some whore who will sell herself for protection. She had no idea as to why Zabuza-sama had thought this was a good idea. No, she muttered to herself as she scraped the carrots into the pot, I know his reasons. Zabuza-sama had explained that if they could get the blonde on their side, then they could petition the Hokage for sanctuary. Haku stirred the soup, listlessly staring into its brown liquid. It's actually not that bad of a plan. Konoha is known for its love of bloodlines, as well as being the strongest of the big five. However, Haku frowned as she reached her hand into the neck of her blue kimono and pulled out a necklace. The necklace was on a black cord, and attached to it was a silver snowflake embedded with a single diamond in its center. The necklace was the last thing she had from her mother. Kawa-san told me to marry for love. Oh, Zabuza. What's this I hear about you being laid out? Was an old bridge builder too much for the scary demon of the mist? A slimy and, unfortunately, familiar voice broke Haku out of her memories. Haku left the kitchen to see that. Gato and his two bodyguards Waraji and Zora had stopped by and were in Zabuza-sama's bedroom. Gato was a short man with shaggy receding white hair that fell down to his back and a thin handlebar mustache of the same color. He preferred to wear dark-colored business suits with a pair of circular black shades. So, demon? Gato said with an eye roll, his voice dripping with derision, what kept you from finishing the job? The old man hit you with his cane? Zabuza laid in his bed. Silent. The sheets pulled up to his neck. Waraji let out a bark of laughter. Yeah, was the old man too much for ya? I always thought that you were compensating for something with that sword of yours. Waraji was a brown-skinned man with an eye patch covering his right eye who sported a goatee and preferred to have his hair up in a topknot. He was shirtless and wore white pants. Shinobi, Zora spat the word, always think they're better than us cause they got that chakra crap. Boss could have paid us half and we would have gotten the job done. Zora was a light-skinned man with bluish-white hair who wore a blue jacket with black pants and a purple beanie. He also had 2 tattoos on his face that went from below the center of each eye to the center of each cheek. Gato nodded. That's right, I could have had my boys here do your job for half the price. So, Gato approached Zabuza's bed, what gives? I paid you good money, and here you are lying in bed wasting it. The bridge builder, Zabuza began, hired Shinobi. And so what? Gato yelled, interrupting Zabuza. What do you care about some random? Zabuza flexed his killing intent, a purple aura gathering around his body. Gato's bodyguards reflexively grabbed the katanas strapped to their waists and took a step back. Gato quickly shut up. Zabuza glared at Gato to keep him quiet. As I was saying, the bridge builder hired Shinobi, one of whom was Hatake Kakashi. Gato paled. He knew who Kakashi was. When Gato was a more reputable businessman, he had thought about hiring the strongest shinobi from the strongest village to do a mission for him. When he asked the Hokage, the old geezer told him that their best shinobi, Hatake Kakashi, was very expensive, meaning he was very dangerous. Zabuza continued. Therefore, you'll now be paying triple my rate. What? Gato bellowed, forgetting his fear for a moment as he reached out to pull back Zabuza's bed sheet. That's highway robbery. As Gato's hand was about to grasp the sheet, Haku decided to intervene. She grabbed the minuscule mogul's wrist with enough force to break it and declared in a chilling tone, "You will not touch Zabuza-sama." Gato screamed out in pain. "You bitch!" Seeing their boss being attacked spurred the two bodyguards into action. Yet before they could take a single step, Haku had disappeared in a burst of speed and reappeared between the two of them. In her hands were their swords, drawn from their sheaths and resting at their throats. Zora and Waraji had the same thought, fast. Haku, release them, Zabuza ordered. Haku nodded. Releasing the two bodyguards, she disappeared in another burst of speed and reappeared by Zabuza's bedside. Gato, Zabuza started, making sure that the midget, who was still holding his broken wrist, was paying attention before he continued. When Gato looked up from where he was kneeling on the floor, Zabuza knew he had succeeded. "You'll pay me triple." "Fine," Gato spat, as he threw a glare towards Haku. "Triple. But you'll do it in 2 weeks." Zabuza glanced towards Haku, the unasked question obvious. "Can I be up before that?" Haku gave Zabuza a slight nod. "Agreed, Gato. 2 weeks. Now leave, I've got plans to make." Gato left the hideout with his two bodyguards, a look of apoplectic rage on his face. "I had it handled, Haku." Zabuza moved the sheet to show that he had a kunai in his left hand. "I know, Zabuza-sama." Haku clasped her hands in front of her waist. "Though I didn't want that slime to touch you." Zabuza repressed a sigh. Sometimes Haku's devotion was a bit excessive. "You'll have to get used to it, Haku. Our current way of life will have us dealing with slime like Gato on a daily basis." Haku groaned and face-palmed. Zabuza-sama wasn't as sly as he thought he was. "Fine, Zabuza-sama, I'll think about your plan." "Think about it. And that's all I'll promise you." If Zabuza could, he would have done a little jig. Sadly, his injuries prevented him from doing so. So he settled for a bright grin hidden by his bandages. "That's all I ask, Haku. And who knows, maybe it was destiny that we met the Gaki. Now I want you to head out tomorrow and get the herbs. I feel like I'll need to be at my best soon." "As you wish, Zabuza-sama." Haku bowed. "And Haku, I smelled the soup burning." When Naruto had fallen asleep in the forest, the things he had expected to be awoken by included the sun, an animal, his sensei, one of his teammates, or, heaven forbid, some enemy. He never expected to be woken up by an angel. "You'll catch a cold if you sleep out here," a voice as soft as silk said, as Naruto felt a hand gently shake his shoulder. Groaning, Naruto opened his bleary eyes only to be met with warm chocolate-brown eyes, residing in a soft face with a button nose and pouty pink lips all framed by a curtain of black tresses. "Beautiful," Naruto murmured. The angel blushed, as her hand left his shoulder and demurely covered her mouth. "Era," she giggled, "thank you for the compliment, Shinobi-san." She moved her hand and gave Naruto a bright smile. Naruto, realizing that he blurted out his thoughts, scratched the back of his head as he gave her a sheepish grin. "Sorry." Naruto then tilted his head, as his mind caught up with her last comment. "Say, how did you know I was a shinobi?" Naruto asked with the slightest amount of suspicion. The angel slowly reached her hand forward and flicked his hiate, producing a tiny ding as her nail struck the metal. "Is this not your headband, Shinobi-san?" she asked teasingly. Naruto grumbled as he quickly turned his head to the side to hide his embarrassment. "Baka Naruto," he silently admonished himself. He then turned towards the woman and stated, "And my name's not Shinobi-san, it's Uzumaki Naruto, future Hokage of Konohagakure." He finished his statement with a bright grin. My apologies, I did not know I was in the presence of someone so great," she said with faux surprise coloring her tone. She bowed her head slightly. "My name is Yuki Haku, aspiring doctor." "Doctor?" Naruto tilted his head, then shivered. "I'm not a fan of doctors, too many needles." Haku held up her basket as she suppressed a laugh. "Then I hope you like me. I prefer to use herbs in my treatments." "Herbs?" Naruto trailed off, reminded of something. His blue eyes widened in realization. "I didn't hurt the herbs, did I?" he asked, hoping he didn't damage the herbs during his training last night. The last time he had done so, Ino had found out and made her displeasure known. On a dirt road somewhere in the countryside of Hino Kuni, a kunoichi with platinum blonde hair and pupilless teal eyes sneezed. It wouldn't have been so bad if she wasn't eating at an onigiri at the moment, and subsequently sprayed bits of half-chewed rice and snot over her new top. Her scream of rage could be heard for miles around. Haku shook her head. No, Uzumaki-san, you didn't hurt the herbs. In fact, Haku made a show of looking around. They appeared to be the only undamaged things in this clearing. Naruto let out a nervous chuckle as he scratched his cheek. Sorry, I guess I might have gone a little overboard with training. Haku made a sound in agreement. She then looked into Naruto's eyes. He has beautiful blue eyes, she thought absently, and asked, Why are you out here training, Uzumaki-san? You can just call me Naruto, Haku-san. Naruto waved his hand as if brushing away the formalities. As for why I'm training, I want to get stronger. Stronger? But you look so strong and manly already. Haku gushed. Nope. I need to be stronger, a lot stronger than I am. Naruto exclaimed, excitedly. Haku's tone softened as she asked, But why? Why do you seek strength, Naruto-san? Naruto paused, thinking of his answer. If you had asked him a week ago, his answer would have been, So I can be the Hokage. But after their team meeting 2 days ago, his answer has changed. Kakashi's team was currently resting from their confrontation with Zabuza in a room that Tazuna had provided for them at his house. Kakashi was resting on the sole futon in the room, having collapsed from chakra exhaustion shortly after the Oinin had left with Zabuza's body. While each of his genin was doing something to relax, Sakura was brushing her hair, Sasuke was checking his equipment, and Naruto was leaning on the windowsill and staring out to sea. It was his final genin, Naruto, who occupied Kakashi's thoughts as he stared up at the ceiling. Naruto surprised me. I did not expect him to hinge into a shuriken and have Sasuke throw him at Zabuza. It was wonderful teamwork. Although Naruto, come here for a second, Kakashi ordered as he continued to stare up at the ceiling. Naruto broke out of his daydreaming and knelt down by Kakashi's bedside. What is it, Kakashi-sensei? Kakashi gave Naruto his eye smile to put him at ease. Naruto, I want to thank you and Sasuke as well for saving me. Your plan to force Zabuza to release me was ingenious. Naruto bashfully rubbed the back of his head. Gee, thanks, Kakashi-sensei. I just knew I had to do something to save you, Databayo. It's like you said, those who break the rules are trash, but those who abandon their comrades are worse than trash. Thank you, Naruto. However, Kakashi narrowed his eyes at his student. Why didn't you have a shadow clone transform into a shuriken and have that thrown instead? You realize by having the real you thrown you placed yourself in immediate danger? Naruto started to sweat. Yeah? I guess I didn't really think that far ahead. No, Kakashi sighed, you didn't think that far ahead, but that's a reflection on me, your teacher, rather than on you. The Oinin made it clear when he mentioned water walking that I have been neglectful as your sensei. To all of you. Sakura perked up. Water walking? She asked, as she placed her brush in her bag and walked over to kneel on the other side of Kakashi's bed. What did the Oinin mean by water walking? And what is an Oinin anyway? To answer your first question, water walking is a chakra control exercise that teaches a shinobi how to channel chakra through their feet to stand on water. It's how Zabuza and I were fighting on the lake. Kakashi explained. And why haven't you taught us that yet? Sasuke interjected, as he plopped himself down next to Sakura, sitting cross-legged. Kakashi mentally sighed, as he prepared himself for the eventual explosion from his students, because I've yet to teach you tree walking. Tree walking, Sakura's eyes narrowed in thought. Is this something that the other genin squads have already been taught? She asked with an accusing tone. Kakashi winced. Damn, sometimes I forget how smart Sakura is, maybe? He squeaked out. Kakashi-sensei. Sakura erupted. Just what are we supposed to know by now? A lot more than you currently do, Kakashi told her as he tried to burrow himself into his pillow to escape his female student's wrath. And that blame lies solely with me, Kakashi admitted as he looked towards his students, and for that I apologize. I was hoping that you three would approach me with questions on how to improve, but I've realized as I've been laying here that you three probably didn't even know what you had to improve on. And what do we have to improve on? Sasuke asked with his chin resting on his threaded fingers. A lot, though the most pressing thing is chakra control. It'll help improve Sakura's reserves, as well as ensuring that you and Naruto don't waste nearly as much chakra on your jutsus. Kakashi explained. So, we'll start with tree climbing tomorrow. We need to do this because you never know when we'll run into another shinobi like Zabuza. Hell, I wouldn't put it past Gato to hire another nin. Would he really do that, Kakashi-sensei? I mean, Zabuza had to have cost him a pretty penny to hire. Wouldn't that have set him back? Sakura asked, sounding a bit fearful of potentially facing someone like Zabuza again. Kakashi didn't want to worry his genin, but as they say, forewarned is forearmed, so he soldiered on. The fact that he hired someone like Zabuza means that his operations here in Nami no Kuni are lucrative. Very lucrative. Meaning, he's very likely to hire another shinobi of Zabuza's caliber to protect those operations. Sakura paled, Naruto gulped, and Sasuke clenched his fists so hard his knuckles popped. We were lucky, Kakashi continued. If Zabuza had had an accomplice, who knows what would have happened. The irony of this statement would not be lost on Kakashi in the near future. Naruto, Sakura, Sasuke, Kakashi addressed them, making sure to look each genin in the eye as he said their names. I promised you that I would never let my comrades die, and I meant it then and I mean it now. However, I can't guarantee that I'll always be there to protect you or, Kakashi gave a self-deprecating chuckle, that you might not have to save me. That's why we need to get stronger. All of us. So that we can protect each other. You bet, Kakashi-sensei. Naruto grinned. Let's get stronger together. Sakura cheered, while internally she was thinking, Cha, I'll be stronger than you yet, Inobuta. Then Sasuke-kun will be all mine. HNN, Sasuke smirked. Alright, Kakashi said, we'll start tree walking tomorrow? Any questions? Wait, you never answered my question about what an oinen was? Sakura pointed out. Kakashi's sweat dropped, sorry, I forgot about that. He turned to his orange-garbed student, really need to get him some darker clothes. How he outran and hid from Umbu in that monstrosity is beyond me. Would you care to field this one, Naruto? Sure, Naruto chirped. It was rare that he actually got to show off his knowledge. Naruto turned towards Sakura. An oinen is a ninja who's responsible for hunting down their village's missing nin and disposing of their bodies. They do it so that enemy villages can't learn secrets from their bodies or take anything from them. Konoha has some oinen as well. They serve as part of Umbu. Wow, Sakura gasped, I didn't know that happened. And I didn't know you were so knowledgeable, Naruto, she said, sounding impressed. Hee, when you hang around Hokage as much as I do, you learn some things. Naruto said as he placed his hands behind his head. Sakura shook her head, as if to ward off an impending headache. Naruto, stop referring to Hokage-sama so disrespectfully. But Sakura-chan, Naruto moaned weakly, having had this conversation before and knowing where it's gonna go, Hokage likes it when I call him that. I don't care. It's disrespectful, so you shouldn't do it. Sakura huffed, as she crossed her arms. Sakura-chan, Naruto hung his head. Although, another question popped into her head as she mentally ran through Kakashi and Naruto's conversation with the oinen. I recall you saying that it was a rule for oinen to dispose of bodies where they dropped. Why didn't he? Kakashi let out a nervous chuckle. I may have implied that I wanted to take Zabuza's blade for Konoha. Sasuke scoffed. That hunk of metal? Don't laugh, Sasuke. That hunk of metal is worth enough to buy you a small town. Kakashi laughed as he saw Sakura and Naruto bolt upright. Really? They yelled simultaneously. Kakashi nodded. Yes, really. Zabuza's blade, the Kubikura Bocho, is one of 7 special blades that is passed down to the best 7 sword wielders of Kirigakure no Sato. Each blade has a special ability associated with it, and when all 7 swordsmen are on the battlefield with their blades, they are said to be capable of bringing down an entire nation. Wow. Naruto and Sakura were amazed. Even Sasuke was impressed, going by the slight widening of his eyes. Net Kakashi-sensei, Sakura began wringing her hands, we don't have to worry about another swordsman showing up, do we? Kakashi allayed her fears. It's highly unlikely, Sakura. From our intel, 6 of the 7 are either dead or missing nin. There is one who remains loyal to the Mizukage, but with Kiri's civil war I doubt he would be leaving his Kage's side anytime soon. Sakura breathed a sigh of relief. That's good. Naruto nodded his head in agreement, and Sasuke slightly relaxed. That's enough talk. We've got an early morning tomorrow, so let's get some rest. Kakashi dismissed them. A snap of fingers broke Naruto out of his thoughts. Are you okay, Naruto-san? Haku asked him as she withdrew her hand. Sorry, Naruto gave her an apologetic grin, I guess I was just lost in thought. To answer your question, I want to get stronger to protect my sensei and teammates. There Naruto paused as he searched for the right words, precious to me. Haku's eyes shone brightly at his answer, and for some unknown reason, Naruto felt like he had just passed some sort of test. That's a good reason to get stronger. In fact, I think that the only way for a person to be truly strong is when they are protecting someone precious to them. Haku explained as she gave Naruto a smile that made his heart do backflips. I agree, Haku-chan, Naruto exclaimed. Haku blushed at the affectionate suffix. Then she threw Naruto a sly grin. Haku-chan? My Naruto-kun, Haku teased as she drew out the kun suffix. How forward of you. Naruto yelped, his face turning cherry red, as he frantically waved his arms up and down. No. I mean, you are pretty beautiful. But I didn't mean but I wouldn't mind getting close to you. I mean getting to know you. I mean, I'll shut up now. Naruto trailed off as he stared at the dirt, wondering if the earth would be kind enough to swallow him at that moment. Haku giggled. Poor boy, she thought, he blushes any harder and he might faint. Somewhere in Kanahigaku no Sato, a blue-haired kunoichi with pale lavender eyes sneezed during a meeting between her father and sister. Are you okay, Nei-chan? A girl with long brown hair and similar eyes asked. I'm okay, Emuto, the blue-haired kunoichi assured her with a smile. Their father, who had long brown hair and pale eyes as well, let out a small cough to get their attention. Hinata, Hanabi, let us continue. Yes, Tusama, they both replied. It's all right, Naruto-kun, Haku assured him, placing emphasis on the suffix. I was just surprised. Haku stood up and offered the boy a hand. Now would this kind gentleman assist this humble doctor with her tasks? Naruto took her hand and stood up. You bet, Databeo. Databeo? Haku asked as she covered her mouth to suppress her giggles. Naruto just groaned as he facepalmed. Unknown to either of them, a raven-haired genin was leaning against a tree and listening to the conversation. The dobe has got himself a girlfriend. Sasuke smirked as he put his hands in his pockets and left to report to Kakashi. Wonder what the scarecrow will think of this. Scene change. Elsewhere on the island, Gato was sitting in his office smoking a cigar with his left hand. That bitch, he glared down at his broken right wrist that was in a sling. She dares to harm me? Gato? I am the biggest businessman this side of the elemental nations. Gato was broken out of his fumings when his assistant entered his office. Gato-sama, we've got a message from our contact in Kirigakure no Sato. And? Gato growled, as he glared at his assistant over his shades. The message in his eyes was clear. If I don't like this, I'll be needing a new assistant. Gato's assistant gulped. Our contact has informed us that the Mizukage is interested in our offer, and he will be sending his agent in the next 10 days. Wonderful. Gato took a long drag of his cigar, held the smoke in his mouth for a second, and slowly exhaled. That's the best news I've gotten all day. Gato tapped his cigar into his crystal ashtray. You're dismissed. Gato's assistant scurried out of the room. Gato swiveled in his chair and looked out his window and towards the warehouse floor. He watched for a while as his men were busy packaging his product, the sight never failing to bring a grin to his face. Soon, I'll be expanding into Mizuno Kuni. Gato looked at his broken wrist and chuckled, and the bitch will get what's coming to her. Who says you can't mix business with pleasure? Scene change. Haku was humming a pleasant tune as she entered their hideout, lightly swinging her basket full of herbs that Naruto had helped her pick. The basket was filled to bursting. Haku let out a chuckle, remembering Naruto's eagerness to help her with her task. So eager was he that she had to stop him from picking the clearing clean. He apologized and gave her his signature grin that stretched out his whisker marks and narrowed his eyes into slits, making him look like a smiling fox. Someone sounds happy. Did something good happen? Zabuza asked, breaking Haku out of her thoughts. Oh, I was just thinking about my time spent with Naruto-kun, Haku responded, not noticing her slip up as she placed her basket on the kitchen counter and grabbed her apron. I might as well get lunch started before I start grinding herbs, she thought. Naruto-kun? Zabuza parroted, confused. The blonde gaki? When did you meet the gaki? Wait, why are you calling him kun? If the brat touched you, I'll kill him. Zabuza roared, a surge of overprotectiveness overcoming him. Zabuza-sama! Haku gasped, her hand going to her chest to calm her racing heart. She had not expected that outburst. Then Zabuza's words registered in her mind, and her eye twitched. If the brat touched you, I'll kill him. Oh Zabuza-sama, Haku said in a sweet tone of voice as she approached his bedside, unconsciously charging Hayatan chakra to her right hand. Zabuza gulped as phantom pains ran through his cheek. I know that tone of voice, Zabuza thought frantically. It's the same tone she used when Zabuza's thoughts were cut short by a familiar pain. It's your plan, Zabuza no Baka, Haku yelled. For the second time in 3 days, a resounding slap echoed throughout the forest and sent birds fleeing from their nests and to the skies. So, you met the gaki? Zabuza asked after he had regained consciousness and Haku had given him his first dose of medicine. He repressed a shudder at the bitter taste as he reached for a glass of water to wash the taste down. Yes, she said as she sat in a chair by his bedside. I happened to meet him in the forest near the herbs I needed to get. He had exhausted himself training. Oh? Zabuza raised his glass to his lips, and what was the gaki training in? Haku slyly smiled as she watched Zabuza take a drink. Nothing much, just tree walking. A spray of water escaped Zabuza's lips as he sputtered, What? I was outsmarted by a genin who couldn't even tree walk. Yes, Haku nodded as she tried, and failed, to keep the laughter out of her voice. Quite an accomplishment for my Naruto-kun. Zabuza slumped in his bed, a dark miasma surrounding him as he repeatedly muttered, he couldn't even tree walk. He couldn't even tree walk. He did this for a few seconds until Haku's comment registered. Wait. Zabuza sat up and looked towards Haku with hope shining in his eyes. My Naruto-kun? Does this mean that you'll carry out the plan? Haku blushed and looked away. Well, it's too soon to tell. But when we parted ways, we agreed to meet up again tomorrow. That's great. Zabuza cheered. Soon we'll be Konoha shinobi and won't have to look over our shoulders anymore. Zabuza-sama. Haku whined as she waved her arms. I never said that I agreed. Plus, we don't even know if Naruto-kun will agree. Zabuza brushed off her comment with a wave of his hand. Meh, I've got a feeling that it will all work out. It's like it's destined, or something. Haku's eyes widened. Zabuza-sama, are you clairvoyant? What? Zabuza asked, confused. Scene change. I'm back, Naruto announced as he entered Tezuna's house with a bounce in his step. He saw that his team was eating breakfast at the dining table with the client's family. Kakashi, sitting at the head of the table with a good view of the front door, threw Naruto a lazy wave, his face buried in his precious Ika. Yo, Naruto, get some training done this morning? Kakashi asked, a hint of mirth in his voice. Yes, sensei, I did. I took your advice and used my Kage Bunshin, shadow clones, to help speed up my training, Naruto replied as he pulled out a chair and sat down next to Tsunami. Tsunami, Tezuna's daughter, was a woman with long blue hair wearing a short-sleeved pink shirt and a long blue skirt. She stood up. Let me get you breakfast, Naruto-kun. Tsunami gave Naruto a motherly smile before she went to the kitchen to get him a plate. Sakura giggled. Yeah, Naruto, how was training this morning? She asked, putting stress on the word training. Sasuke raised his bowl of rice to his face to hide his smirk. It went fine, Naruto stated slowly. For some reason his prankster senses were tingling, and not in a good way. The last time he felt like this was when Enko-chan had gotten him back from messing with her dango. Naruto shivered at the memory. Deep in the bowels of Konohagakura's torture and interrogation building, a kunoichi with light purple hair and pupilless brown eyes sneezed, right into a prisoner's face. Is the big, mean torturer coming down with a cold? The prisoner mocked. The kunoichi narrowed her eyes, then she gave the prisoner a devilish grin as she went to her instrument table and grabbed a bottle of chili powder and a funnel. Sneezing and screams were heard soon after. Naruto continued. I made good progress. I'll probably be at the top of the tree in a few days. That's great. Maybe you and Sasuke will catch up to me soon, Sakura teased as she held up her arm and flexed her bicep. Sasuke and Naruto rolled their eyes good-naturedly. Tsunami returned and placed a bowl of rice and a plate of grilled fish in front of Naruto. Here you go, enjoy. Thanks, Tsunami-san, Naruto said as he picked up his chopsticks. Itadakimasu. Naruto took his first bite of rice and moaned in delight. This is as good as Ayam-chan's cooking. In a small ramen stand, a young woman with long brown hair and black eyes sneezed. Are you okay, Ayam? An older man with graying black hair and small black eyes asked as he was wiping down the counter. I'm fine, too-san, she assured him as she tied on her bandana. Maybe someone is thinking about me? Our number one customer, perhaps? The old man teased. Ayam's face flushed red. Too-san. Naruto took a bite of his fish and was savoring it when Kakashi let out a perverted giggle. Oh Haruto, you naughty boy, seducing a doctor in a forest. What? Naruto coughed out, pounding his chest as he tried to dislodge the fish caught in his throat. Tsunami smacked him on the back, helping him clear his airway and sending a glob of half-chewed fish flying from Naruto's mouth and onto the table with a wet splat. You, Sakura and Inari let out at the same time. Naruto's head whipped towards Kakashi. What did you say? Oh, nothing. I'm just enjoying this story about a ninja and a doctor meeting in a forest, Kakashi said with feigned casualness. Kakashi peered over the edge of his book and locked eyes with his blonde genin, enjoying how he began to squirm in his seat. Have you heard it before? Kakashi asked, innocently. Naruto gulped. Scene change. In a darkened office, a man stood in front of his windows and watched a mass of dark clouds creep their way over the mountains. When he was younger, the beast inside of him would stir when a storm approached. But for the last few years, ever since the purges had started, the beast had been silent. Chillingly silent. If someone were to take a close look at the man's pink eyes at that moment, they would see his eyes flash red with tri-bladed shuriken for pupils overtaking his usual eye color. Mizukage-sama, a shinobi, entered the office, knelt down in front of a desk and addressed the man. Yes? The Mizukage asked, as he continued to watch the coming storm, his eyes returning to their pupilless pink. We've made contact with the businessman. He agrees to your terms, the shinobi reported. A slight smile crept its way onto the Mizukage's face as thunder rumbled in the distance. Excellent, you are dismissed. Yes, sir. The shinobi left the office in the swirl of a shushin body flicker. 10 days. The Mizukage stated to the darkened room. You have 10 days to recover Kubikura Bocho. Do not disappoint me. There was no response. In fact, the only sound in the room was the spattering of rain hitting the windows, then lightning cracked like a whip and in a flash of blue the room was illuminated, revealing a tall man with shaggy blonde hair wearing a white umbu mask with green triangle painted on its lower half, slits for eye holes and Kirigakure's symbol etched onto the forehead. When the light faded, the sound of spattering rain was drowned out by laughter tinged with madness. Haku stood in the clearing where she had met Naruto yesterday, a picnic basket by her feet, as she looked up into the canopy and admired how the sunlight filtered through the leaves, waiting for Naruto to arrive for their date. Though either of them had called it a date, she certainly wouldn't mind if Naruto thought of it as such. That's why she decided to put on some makeup this morning, a little lip gloss to draw attention to her lips, as well as some light eyeshadow and some mascara to make her eyes pop. Her makeup was subtle, just as her one-time sensei had taught her. Subtlety is the key when it comes to applying makeup, his aim told her, as she applied some eyeshadow around Haku's eyes. Zabuza had cashed in a favor from his aim, a missing nin from Amigakure, to teach his charge about the more feminine aspects of life. His aim placed the eyeshadow down on the table, grabbed the lip gloss and continued her lesson. Just like the shinobi arts. If your enemy does not expect it, how can they prepare for it? Though most shinobi, his aim snorted as she rolled her eyes, prefer to learn jutsu that can level battlefields, forgetting that we kunoichi have killed our fair share with only a smile and a blade from our obi. His aim finished applying the makeup, walked around Haku's chair, stood behind her and rested her head on Haku's shoulder as they both gazed into the mirror. It's why women are considered one of the 3 vices for shinobi, we know subtly. But Zabuza-sama is a master of silent killing. That's subtle, Haku protested with a pout. His aim buzzed Haku's cheek. I know, sweetie, and that's why I accepted helping him. Now let's see about getting you a new kimono, on Zabukun's Rio of course. A slight rustle in the trees off to Haku's left drew her attention. A squirrel had appeared on a branch, observing her. At first, she thought nothing of it. Be a ninja long enough and animals stopping to see what you're doing becomes commonplace. They'll watch for a few seconds, and when they see that you're not a threat they'll leave and continue doing whatever it is animals do: hunt, forage, mate. The only animals that don't immediately leave are predators defending their territory, and a squirrel certainly didn't qualify as a predator. Unless you were a nut, that is. Haku held the squirrel's gaze, her chocolate brown eyes boring into its beady black ones. The squirrel didn't react at first. But as the seconds passed by, and as Haku continued to stare at it, unblinkingly, the squirrel started to fidget. After a few more seconds, the squirrel gave Haku what she swore was a nervous grin as it placed its paw on the back of its head and scratched it. Haku's eyes widened as the name, Naruto-kun, left her lips. The squirrel let out a startled squeak as it dashed from its branch, scrambled up the tree trunk and disappeared into the foliage. You called, Haku-chan? A familiar voice asked from behind her. Haku spun around, her hand going towards her obi, when she saw a spiky mop of bright blonde hair and blue eyes that were shining with amusement. Naruto-kun! She gasped, clutching her chest, her heart and mind racing. Just how skilled is he with the Henji no Jutsu, transformation technique? Or stealth for that matter? She wondered as she got her breathing under control. Are you okay, Haku-chan? Naruto asked, sounding worried. He hoped he didn't startle her too badly. The last thing he wanted was to make Haku dislike him. Naruto watched nervously, as she took a deep breath and then flashed him a smile, but the smile didn't put him at ease. In fact, it did quite the opposite, Haku's smile was one that made her eyes smolder and set a fire in Naruto's belly. Naruto stood stock still, entranced, as Haku approached him, a slight sway to her hips. He didn't even register how close she was until she had cupped his face with her cool hands, her thumbs lightly rubbing his whisker marks. Naruto-kun, Haku cooed, her breath ghosting over his face, smelling of mint. You're not gonna sneak up on me again, are you? It took a few seconds for Naruto's mind to process the sounds coming from her mouth, and a few seconds more to translate them into words. Then his mind had to formulate a response, which was rather difficult given her current ministrations. But with a sage-worthy effort he was finally able to stutter out, I'll try not to, Haku-chan. Haku faked a pout as she continued to rub his whisker marks. She was surprised to find that they were actual whiskers, and they were rather soft to the touch. I suppose that's the best I can expect from a ninja. Haku sighed as she released Naruto, suppressing a giggle as she watched Naruto lean forward to maintain their connection. Haku then took in Naruto's appearance, and noted a glaring omission. Naruto-kun, where's your jumpsuit? Naruto looked down at his new attire, a navy button-up shirt, a pair of black pants and his blue sandals. He also wasn't wearing his headband, which wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't the thing he used to keep his unruly bangs out of his eyes. That's a funny story. So, Naruto-kun, what have we learned about lying to your sensei? Kakashi asked as he leaned against a tree, reading his smut, and basking in the punishment his genin was undergoing. It was a punishment Kakashi was familiar with, having undergone it himself with Obito under Minato-sensei. In fact, one could call it a tradition, for Minato had experienced it under Jiraiya, while Jiraiya had experienced it under the Sandaime, and the Sandaime had experienced it under the Shodaime. The punishment was simple. So simple in fact it could be broken down into 2 steps. Step 1. Take a coil of handy-dandy rope. Loop said rope around your genin's wrists and fingers so they can't form hand seals, then tie the rest of the rope to a branch high above your genin, making sure that they can still place their feet flatly on the trunk of the tree, then hoist them up like a piñata. Don't forget to leave enough room so that their toes are barely brushing the ground. Then, with your genin adequately strung up, you tell them that their punishment ends when they tree walk up to the branch. Simple enough. Then comes step 2. And step 2 varies depending on the sensei. The Shodaime, being a Mokuton user, would release, preferred to use wooden spikes for step 2, the Sandaime believed nothing lit a fire under a disorderly genin like a fire jutsu, while Minato-sensei thought kunai was a great way to get the point across. Kakashi, well, he took a page out of Jiraiya's playbook and enlisted some help from his summons. Call off your dog, sensei! Naruto yelled as he ran up the tree to get away from the biting jaws of Kakashi's Niken. He made it halfway to the branch when his concentration slipped and he fell towards the bottom of the tree, and to the dog below. That's a shame. Kakashi turned the page of his book. You were halfway there too. Yoch! Naruto let out when he felt the small pug dog, Pakin, bite into his ankle and tear a strip of his pants off. Hey! These are my only pair of pants. Pakin spat out the fabric. And I'm doing the world a favor by getting rid of such an obnoxious eyesore, brat. Eyesore? Orange is awesome, Databeo! Naruto yelled as he flailed about, trying to kick the tiny dog, who nimbly avoided his strikes. Plus, what would you know, you ugly pug? Ugly? Pakin's left eye twitched. I'll show you ugly. Bull! Pakin barked towards the largest of Kakashi's Niken, a bulldog, who was laying down in the shade on the sidelines. Get in here. Naruto paled as he saw the large dog that was twice his size approach, drool dripping from his jaws. Oh no. Oh no no no. Naruto's feet were slipping and scrambling at the trunk, trying to stick to it with chakra, but to no avail as the beast drew closer. Naruto could feel its fetid breath on his backside. A loud crunch was heard, followed by a scream of pain that rocked the whole forest. Soon after, Naruto completed his punishment, and had mastered tree walking in the process. All it cost him was his pride, and the seat of his pants. Haku had tears streaming down her face as she was doubled over, laughing. So your sensei's Niken, they ripped up your pants? Haku was able to get out through her laughter. Yeah, Naruto chuckled good-naturedly. Looking back on it, he could see he was wrong not to tell his sensei what he had done yesterday morning. Thankfully our client's daughter, Tsunami, is a seamstress in her spare time, so she had some clothes she'd made lying around. Haku's laughter died down into chuckles, and soon into giggles. How fortunate for you, Naruto-kun. Though I must say she chose rather well, those clothes look very good on you. The shirt really brings out your eyes. Naruto grinned. Thanks for the compliment, Haku-chan. Naruto then squinted his eyes as he looked at her. I don't know what you did, but you look even prettier today, Haku-chan. Haku blushed as she brushed a loose bang behind her ear. Thank you? She then lifted the picnic basket. Are you ready to eat now? Naruto's growling stomach answered the question for him. Haku laughed, and Naruto soon joined her. A breeze passed through the clearing carrying the pair's laughter and tousling the hair of a shadow clone of a certain Konoha Jonin, who was hiding up on a branch, notepad in hand, furiously scribbling notes. Jiraiya-sama would be so proud right now, the Kakashi clone thought. Scene change. In Yugakure no Sato, an older man with waist-length white hair, wearing a green short kimono with matching pants under which he wore mesh armor. He also wore handguards, a black belt, red Geta sandals and a red haori with 2 yellow circles on each side. He also carried with him a large scroll that rested on the small of his back. Currently, the older man was sitting on a branch, a telescope in his left hand, a pen in his right and a notebook on his lap. He was gathering inspiration for his latest volume of Ika Ika by researching at one of Yuno Kuni's numerous hot springs. His latest subjects of research had just entered the bath, 4 young women, 2 blondes, a redhead and one with light gray hair. The 2 blondes were light-skinned while the redhead and grayette were darker-skinned, meaning those 2 most likely hailed from Kaminari no Kuni. All 4 were wearing towels, though he could tell by the way the towels clung to their forms that everyone but the redhead had tremendous assets. Come on girls, don't be shy, the man muttered under his breath as a perverted chuckle escaped his lips. Show Jiraiya-sama what you're working with. Jiraiya leaned forward, his left eye fused to the end of his telescope as he watched the women enter the bath and begin to shed their towels. Yes. His pen was a blur of motion, he was writing so fast it was doubtful if even the Sharingan could keep up with it. Just as the blonde with the bob cut was about to bear all, a breeze brushed past Jiraiya's nose and caused him to freeze, his telescope falling from numb fingers. The world has changed, he stated with wide eyes as he shot up to his feet and turned towards the breeze, unaware that his sudden motion alerted the women below him to his presence. Women who happened to be kunoichi. Jiraiya took a deep whiff. I smell it in the air. He closed his eyes and reached out to his greatest source of power. I feel it in the perv. When Jiraiya opened his coal eyes, they were burning with a determination hotter than the sun. Pointing into the breeze, he roared to the heavens, somewhere a great story has just begun. So focused was he on this divine revelation that he nearly did not notice the blue, rodent-shaped fireball and 3 lightning balls flying towards his face. Instinctively, he replaced himself with a Kage Bunshin, shadow clone. He always had one on standby in case of emergencies. Then he proceeded to let out howls of pain and anguish so as to appease his attackers. Then he waited to see if they would follow up. Thankfully, after a few minutes, nothing happened, but just to be sure he jumped into a separate tree to check the bath. It was empty. Jiraiya pouted, a rather unbecoming look on the man. They're gone. And I was so close too. Just a little more and I would have seen everything. Jiraiya had what could only be described as a lecherous grin on his face. A polite cough broke Jiraiya out of his debauched imaginations. Jiraiya turned around to see a snow monkey with gray fur crouched behind him. The monkey wore a black gi with the Konoha leaf stitched onto its chest in silver. It held a scroll in its paw. The monkey held out the scroll. Jiraiya-sama, a message from Sandaime-sama. Oh, and what does the old monkey want now, Itsuki? Jiraiya asked as he took the scroll and checked it for the usual security seal. It was a seal that was attuned to his blood and chakra, meaning that only Jiraiya could open the scroll. If anyone else tried, the results would be explosive. Finding it, Jiraiya bit his thumb and smeared the bloody digit on the seal as he channeled chakra. The seal glowed white and then faded from the paper. I do not know what Sandaime-sama wants. I am just a messenger. Itsuki replied in a no-nonsense tone. If that is all? Itsuki asked, arms folded onto his chest. Jiraiya waved him off, his eyes consuming the scroll. You're dismissed. Tell Sensei I'll have more information after I speak with my contact. Itsuki disappeared in a white puff of smoke as Jiraiya finished the message. So Sensei wants to know more about the bloodline purges in Kiri. Jiraiya muttered under his breath as he tried to puzzle out Pure FSS motivation. What's the play, Sensei? Alliance? Jiraiya snorted at the thought. I don't see Sensei allying with Yagura after he systematically began slaughtering his own people. The rebels? Maybe. Jiraiya trailed off as he rubbed his chin. The rebels. The bloodline rebels. Recruitment? Konoha did lose a major bloodline with the loss of the Uchiha. Jiraiya shook his head. It doesn't matter, Sensei will tell me when I've got the info for him. Jiraiya threw the scroll into the air and destroyed it with a small Gokaku no Jutsu, Grand Fireball Jutsu. Jiraiya watched the ashes of the scroll be scattered by the wind. Off to see Kaido, Inami no Kuni. Scene change. So why did you become a shinobi, if you don't mind my asking? Haku asked before she took a bite of some of the onigiri she made. It was quite good if the sounds Naruto were making were any indication. Naruto swallowed his food before he spoke. Ayam-chan had pounded into him the importance of table manners. She has the dented ladle to prove it. I became a shinobi because my Gigi is the Hokage and I wanted to be like him. Haku feigned shock. Your grandfather is Hokage? Naruto chuckled. No, he's not my actual grandfather. He's just taken care of me for as long as I can remember, so I call him Gigi. And what about your parents? Haku asked, though she soon came to regret it as she saw his bright blue eyes dim and his shoulders slump. I never knew my parents. I'm an orphan, Naruto stated sadly. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun. If I had. Haku began to apologize, but was cut off. It's okay, Haku-chan, Naruto reassured her with a soft smile. You didn't know. Plus, Gigi told me that my parents were great ninja, heroes who gave their lives to protect the village. Is that why you want to be Hokage, to protect the village your parents protected? Haku asked softly. That, and also, Naruto unconsciously placed his right hand on his stomach. I'm not exactly well liked in my village, though that is probably putting it lightly. So I want to be Hokage, because being Hokage means I would have gained everyone's respect, and they will stop looking down on me. Naruto then locked eyes with Haku, his blue orbs boring deep into her brown ones, shining with a pain that Haku knew all too well. I don't want to be hated, are what his eyes said, and it was a message that resonated with Haku's very soul. Naruto-kun, Haku began slowly, I know how you feel. I wasn't well liked by my village either. Haku chuckled mirthlessly. In fact, I was despised by my village. All for something I couldn't control. Haku reached into her kimono and pulled out her necklace, and showed it to Naruto. This is the only thing I have left from my mother. Naruto gulped. Did they? Naruto stopped, the unasked question hanging in the air. Yet both knew what he was going to ask. Yes. Haku nodded. Unbidden, tears began to stream down her face as memories of the day she lost her mother flashed through her mind. She remembered her mother and father arguing. The mob of villagers gathered outside her house, yelling things like eyesore, mutant, freak and demon, a sound of shattered glass, her mother screaming, and then blood, lots of blood, her mother's blood, from her mother's body lying on the floor, cold, dead. Haku wanted to be hugged. To feel her mother's warm arms around her like she was feeling right now. Wait. Haku looked up to see that she was currently in Naruto's arms, her face buried into his chest. Haku's face burned scarlet. I'm sorry, Haku-chan, Naruto murmured into her ear as he gently stroked her hair and held her. Haku tried to open her mouth to say something, but nothing came out. Her mind was fried. This was the first time she had ever been held by a boy, and it was after he had seen her cry. Does he think I'm weird? Is my makeup running? I didn't want to cry in front of him. He feels warm. Eventually, Haku just decided to go with it and snuggle into Naruto's embrace, basking in the comfort he provided. Neither could tell you how long they held one another, but both would have agreed it didn't last nearly enough. Reluctantly, Haku was the first to move, as she rubbed her eyes on the back of her hand. They came away black with makeup. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun, I don't know what came over me. Haku reached into the picnic basket, pulled out a canteen of water and a napkin, and started to wipe her eyes. It's okay, Haku-chan, Naruto reassured her. Sometimes when you need to cry, you need to cry. Still, it was embarrassing, Haku stated as she balled up the napkin and placed it in the picnic basket. It wouldn't do to litter now, would it? She then turned towards Naruto and asked with a bright smile, How do I look? Naruto drank in Haku, her cheeks slightly flushed, a black smudge of mascara was still on her left cheek, her eyes were puffy from crying, and her hair had a few strands out of place from being held against his chest. Beautiful, Haku-chan, Naruto replied, as if he was stating a self-evident truth. The sun rises in the east, the planet is round and Haku is beautiful. Haku flushed, then a glint of determination entered her chocolate-brown eyes as she leaned forward and placed a kiss on Naruto's right cheek, dangerously close to the corner of his mouth. Thank you, Naruto-kun, she whispered against his cheek, her breath sending pleasant tingles up and down Naruto's spine. Scene change. When Naruto returned to Tazuna's house, he was in a daze. His eyes were glazed and he had a silly grin on his face. He sat down at the dining room table and simply stared at the wall, not noticing Tazuna sitting at the head of the table overlooking his blueprints. Tazuna looked up from his blueprints, saw the look on Naruto's face, then returned to perusing his blueprints with an amused chuckle. Ah, young love. Tsunami exited the kitchen, wiping her hands off on a towel, and saw Naruto staring at the wall with the same look. She giggled into her hand and asked, How did your date go, Naruto-kun? Naruto's widening grin was his only response. Tsunami rolled her eyes good-naturedly. Dinner will be ready soon. Could you please go inform your sensei and teammates? They went out training and Tsunami was cut off by the door opening and the people in question entering the house. Speak of the devils, she shook her head, turned on her heel and returned to the kitchen, yelling over her shoulder, dinner will be ready soon, so wash up. Hey Naruto, Sakura greeted her blonde teammate, and then she remembered where he went earlier in the day, and judging by the grin on Naruto's face it went rather well. A Cheshire grin crept its way onto Sakura's face as she sensed an opportunity to do something she hasn't done in the past couple of months: gossip. Just as she was about to pounce on the unsuspecting blonde, and interrogate him for every minute detail from his date, Kakashi placed his hand on her shoulder and lightly squeezed it. Kakashi-sensei? She asked with a confused look on her face. Kakashi shook his head. Let him bask, Sakura. Kakashi looked towards his current favorite student. On his first mission out of the village the blonde had already scored a date with the beauty, and had gotten a kiss from her as well. Kakashi had never felt prouder as a sensei. And as Kakashi patted his hip pouch where he stored his precious Aika and his new precious notepad that his shadow clone had given him, he had a feeling that Naruto would be a great source of inspiration going forward. You can grill Naruto during dinner. Sakura pouted as she gave a reluctant nod and went up the stairs to go wash up for dinner. Kakashi looked fondly at his student. Minato-sensei would be so proud. Scene change. Zabuza awoke to the smell of chicken being grilled. He kept his eyes closed and maintained his breathing pattern to make it appear as if he was still asleep, an old habit that he had developed while in Kirizumbu. He then strained his ears to pick up any unfamiliar sounds. Usually he would channel chakra to his ears to help him do so, but with the medicine that Haku had him on, he wouldn't dare risk it, because he would explode the chakra pathways in his ears. With that cheerful thought, Zabuza focused on his hearing and found what he expected: the sizzling sound of grilling chicken, the gentle hum Haku would do while cooking, and the creaks and groans of the wooden floorboards of their hideout. Satisfied, Zabuza opened his eyes and called for Haku. Haku entered the room with a skip to her step and a glow about her that seemed to chase away the evening gloom. Yes, Zabuza-sama? She chirped as she sat in the chair by his bedside. Someone is happy, Zabuza observed. Did something good happen? Haku's eyes shone as she simply nodded in response. And? Zabuza asked eagerly, hoping beyond hope that her current mood meant that his plan was about to be put in motion. He could already see it now. Him, Haku and Nagaki strolling into the Hokage's office, and the old geezer offering them sanctuary. I'll go through with it, Zabuza-sama. I'll make Naruto-kun mine, Haku said with fierce determination. Off the coast of Nami no Kuni, a bridge was awash in a maelstrom of blonde shadow clones, all of them being directed by the self-described master bridge builder Tazuna. Run that wood over there. Tazuna pointed at a group of 6 clones carrying stacks of lumber, directing the clones with a flick of his thumb towards the end of the bridge leading towards Hai no Kuni. Bring Takashi some nails. He hollered at a clone standing near the supply tent. Walk underneath the bridge and check for faults. 10 clones standing near the railings quickly hopped over, stuck their feet to the side and started doing just that. Don't you dare write your name in that cement. Tazuna barked at a clone who had his finger hovering above some drying cement. The clone gave the old man a sheepish grin in response, and then walked off to help his clone brothers with the other odd jobs Tazuna had them doing. Tazuna wiped the sweat off his brow with the towel he kept around his neck as he looked up into the clear blue sky and towards the sun. Almost noon, we'll break for lunch in another hour. Tazuna looked over his shoulder to see his guard for the past few days, and the source of his increased manpower. You hear that, brat? We'll break in an hour. You can start dispelling your clones in the next 10 minutes. I heard you, old man. Naruto waved him off as he kept his eyes trained on the Nami end of the bridge, scanning for long black tresses and a bright pink kimono that never failed to get his heart pumping. Tazuna, seeing where the boy's attention was, chuckled. You know, I thought a guard is supposed to be searching for threats, not their girlfriend. Naruto sputtered, his face turning red, as he turned to yell at the old man. Haku-chan's not my girlfriend. Really? Tazuna raised an eyebrow as he raised his right hand and started listing examples. She brings you lunch every day, she greets you with a hug and a kiss, she's practically attached to your hip when she's here. You hate to see her leave but you love to watch her go. Tazuna's eyes widened as if he had just had an epiphany, though in reality he had just seen an opportunity, for the girl in question had just shown up, and she was within earshot. You're right, brat, she's not your girlfriend, she's your wife. Tazuna cackled as he saw Naruto turn so red you could fry an egg on his forehead, while Haku was faring better with only a pink dusting to her cheeks. Unknown to Tazuna, his words painted an image in Naruto's mind that would make the likes of Kakashi and Jiraiya proud. Naruto was imagining returning to his apartment after a long mission only to open the door to be met by the scent of Haku's tantalizing cooking. He turns the corner into the small kitchenette, and sees Haku standing behind a table stacked with mouth-watering dishes. Yet it's not the food that makes Naruto drool, but Haku, who is wearing a smile, an apron and nothing else. Mesmerized, Naruto watches her glide around the table, a gentle sway to her hips, a slight bounce to her perky, as the soft pattering of her bare feet on the hardwood floor, a smoldering look in her eyes as she draws closer and closer until they are finally chest to chest. "Okiri Anada," she'd whisper against his lips as she greeted him with a kiss, "would you like dinner, a bath or me?" "I'd like you, Haku-chan," Naruto replied dazedly, his eyes glazed over. Naruto was so lost in his fantasy that he didn't even feel the hand shaking his shoulder, or the slight trickle of blood going down his nose. "Era," a cool breath caressed the shell of his ear, "is Naruto-kun having icky thoughts about me?" Naruto stiffened at the question. His blue eyes shifted to his left to be met with the pair of chocolate-brown eyes that have starred in his dreams of late. The eyes were twinkling with a glint of mischievousness that was mirrored by the impish smile below them. "And no, Haku-chan," Naruto was able to stutter out. Haku playfully pouted, and Naruto had to quell the overwhelming urge to kiss the look off of her lips. "That's too bad," she sighed morosely, as she snaked her arms around his neck and down his chest as she hugged herself to his back. "I wouldn't have minded, Nata," she punctuated her claim with a tiny nibble to his left ear. Simultaneously, 100 Naruto clones went up in smoke alongside their creator's brain. The last thing Naruto remembers is the sound of Haku's giggles and the feel of her soft chest. Tazuna groaned, "Looks like we're having lunch early today." Naruto awoke to the feeling of delicate fingers running through his hair. He opened his eyes to see Haku staring off into the distance, looking as if she was lost in thought as she absent-mindedly ran her fingers through his hair. "Haku-chan," Naruto rasped, his voice slightly dry from sleep, "are you okay?" The sudden question caused Haku to jump, and nearly dislodged Naruto from her lap. Wait, her lap? Naruto's eyes were in danger of popping out of his skull at that realization. Yet before that could happen, Haku looked down and gave Naruto a gentle look that put him at ease. "Enjoy your nap, Naruto-kun?" "Yes," Naruto replied. He then repeated his question from earlier, "Are you okay, Haku-chan?" Haku tilted her head, her long black hair swaying with the movement. "Why do you ask, Naruto-kun?" "I don't know," Naruto shrugged, or did his best attempt at a shrug, kind of hard to shrug when you're laying down, he soon discovered. "It just looked like you were thinking hard about something." "Oh, I was just thinking about a patient of mine." Haku let out a groan dripping with frustration. "He's proving to be a bit troublesome." Naruto let out a chuckle at her choice of words. Haku arched an eyebrow. "What's so funny?" "Nothing, it's just you reminded me of my friend, Shikamura. The word troublesome is like his catchphrase, though he thinks everything is troublesome." Naruto explained, making air quotations with his hands when he said troublesome, the second time. "So is your troublesome patient the one we gathered herbs for?" Naruto asked. "Yes," Haku nodded. "He wants to get up and move, even though I've told him he needs to rest." "Honestly, just what am I going to do with him?" Haku said with a long-suffering smile. "Sounds like me," Naruto grinned. "I can't stand being stuck resting." "Really?" Haku asked as she leaned forward, sliding her fingers from his scalp and cupping Naruto's chin, her long hair curtaining their faces. "So you don't like laying in my lap?" she asked cutely. Naruto's brain froze. What was the right response? He either says yes and more than likely subject himself to more of Haku's teasing, or he says no and makes himself a liar because lying in Haku's lap was the most comfortable Naruto can ever remember being, as well as potentially offending her. Haku must have seen the panic and indecision on Naruto's face and decided to pity the poor boy. "It's okay, Naruto-kun," Haku reassured the boy as she traced his jaw with her thumbs. "If I didn't want you sleeping on my lap, you wouldn't be." When she felt the tension in Naruto's jaw recede, Haku leaned back and decided to continue their previous conversation. "Where were we?" "Oh yes, my patient. He's getting restless because he's been on bed rest for the past week." "What happened to him?" Naruto asked. "He got into a bit of a scrap about a week ago," Haku answered. Naruto raised an eyebrow. "A bit of a scrap? What kind of scrap leaves someone on bed rest for a week? Sounds like more than a simple scrap." "True," Haku gave a sheepish grin, "but this isn't the first time he's been in a situation like this, so I suppose I don't see it as that big of a deal." "Really? And what does this man do that gets him into so many scraps?" Naruto asked, as he got up from her lap, a suspicious look on his face. "Private security," Haku stated. "And how long have you known this man?" Naruto asked, his eyes narrowed. Naruto did not like the idea of his Haku-chan being around someone who liked to get into dangerous situations. "He's been my guardian for the past 8 years, ever since Haku trailed off as she clutched her necklace through her kimono, a slight frown on her lips. Naruto frantically changed the subject, not wanting to see Haku upset. So what's your guardian like? He's a little rough around the edges, but he's got a good heart, Haku said fondly. In fact, I've told him about you. Really, like what? Naruto asked, sounding curious. Hopefully she didn't mention anything embarrassing, like him fainting. I've told him I've met a sweet ninja boy with the brightest blue eyes, one that I'm interested in, Haku admitted, drawing a smile from Naruto. After I told him that he's just been dying to meet you, Haku clasped her hands in front of her face as she gave Naruto the dreaded puppy eyes. Would you please meet with him, please? It would mean the world to me. Sure, Haku-chan, anything for you, Naruto chirped. Haku was so overjoyed that she couldn't help but give Naruto a big hug as she repeatedly said thank you into his ear. This lasted for a few seconds until Haku pulled back and looked into Naruto's eyes and told him, just remember that he wants to meet with you, not hurt you. Naruto chuckled good-naturedly. I think I can handle a bodyguard, Haku-chan. Brat, quit cuddling with your girlfriend and eat your lunch. Break's over in 10 minutes, Tazuna yelled. As if on cue, Naruto's stomach decided to interject with a growl that a bijou would be proud of. Naruto and Haku both looked at each other, then proceeded to laugh. Scene change. Katon, Gokaku no Jutsu, Fire Release, Grand Fireball Technique. A giant fireball 3 meters high and 2 meters tall roared across the sea, boiling the water and leaving a trail of steam in its fiery wake. Impressive, Sasuke, Kakashi complimented, as he stood beside the boy on Tazuna's dock and watched the technique sustain its form for a dozen more meters before it started to dissipate into embers. How do you feel? Sasuke smirked. Good, Kakashi-sensei. I could launch a fireball of that size 4 more times before I begin to feel strained. And before we started tree walking? Kakashi asked. Sasuke frowned, thinking, maybe 2 of that size, and I would be exhausted afterwards. Kakashi nodded sagely as he began to lecture his student, and that is why we train in chakra control, for what technique is useful if it leaves us exhausted and vulnerable after one use. Even the most foul people we can imagine may have friends or at the very least, subordinates, waiting in the leaves, poised to strike. Kakashi observed his student tense at the words most foul people. Kakashi suppressed a weary sigh, for he didn't need to be a Yamanaka to know what thought was going through Sasuke's mind at the moment. Patience, Sasuke, Kakashi clasped Sasuke's shoulder. The person you are aiming for had to learn these things the same as you do. That person, Sasuke hissed, was stronger than I am at the same age. True, Kakashi acknowledged. But you have an advantage. Sasuke's eyebrow raised, that advantage being? You have a village behind you. Kakashi held up a hand to forestall Sasuke's retort. I know you might not think it's much, given what they did to one of the more powerful clans. Most powerful, Sasuke interrupted. Kakashi threw a glare laced with killing intent towards his genin to silence him. A few seconds passed before Kakashi continued. As I was saying, given what was done to one of the more powerful clans in the elemental nations, it's unsurprising that you would be doubtful of the power of our village. But do not forget that Konohagaku no Sato has come out the victor in all 3 of the Shinobi World Wars, marking us as the strongest of the Big 5. Furthermore, a missing nin, even a powerful one, will never know rest because of the price on their head. Even more so for missing nins with bloodlines. Pray you don't become a missing nin, Sasuke, because there are some villages that will stop at nothing to see the Uchiha bloodline extinguished or under their control. And which type is Konoha? Sasuke couldn't help but ask. The latter, Kakashi stated simply. Though, Kakashi's voice adopted a hard edge as he squeezed Sasuke's shoulder, there are some members on the council who want Konoha to be the former. Don't give them a reason, Sasuke. Sasuke stared at Kakashi, his eyes focusing on the Sharingan eye that was hidden beneath the Jonin's height. As long as they help me avenge my clan. And if they don't? Kakashi's one visible eye narrowed as he stared down his genin. Sasuke opened his mouth to respond when Tsunami yelled, lunch is ready. Come and get it while it's hot. Kakashi yelled back, coming, Tsunami-san. The Jonin then released his student, go inside, Sasuke. We'll talk about this later. Kakashi watched the last loyal Uchiha of Konoha stuff his hands into his shorts and walk into the house. Kakashi looked towards the sky and asked, Obito, what am I going to do with your clansmen? Scene change. An elderly man wearing shabby brown clothes and a straw hat leaned heavily on his walking stick as he hobbled his way down the dirt road of Nami no Kuni's largest village, and what he saw saddened him greatly. What's happened to this place? The elderly man thought, as he glanced to his right and saw a girl who was no more than 7 tugging on passing strangers' pants, begging for food. Sadly, she was not a unique case. In fact, she was the 4th child the elderly man had seen begging for food as he walked towards his destination. Though the signs of poverty didn't stop there, boarded-up stores, houses in disrepair, and every person he passed seemed to wear despair like a pair of well-worn clothes. As the elderly man walked into one of the few grocers who was still open, noting with incredulity at the empty displays, bare shelves, and the high markups for staple foods like rice, he stopped in the center aisle as he saw something that nearly made him snap his walking stick in half. The shopkeeper had his face pressed into a countertop by a meaty hand belonging to a man who appeared to be the misbegotten love child of a bear and a pig. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that every shopper was averting their eyes and refused to do anything. "Where's your payment?" the bear pig snorted as he pressed the shopkeeper's face deeper into the countertop. The shopkeeper, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair, screamed out, "I don't have it." "Really?" The bear pig mimed looking around. From all these empty shelves business must be booming. The bear pig chuckled darkly at his own joke. "Arg, I haven't had anything to sell," the shopkeeper tried to explain, as he squirmed beneath the giant's grip. "Just take everything in the register. There's 3,000 Rio." "That's 800 short, Kaido," the bear pig stated as he drew a single-edged tanto from the sheath on his waist, the 12-inch blade looking the size of a toothpick in the bear pig's giant paw, and Gato-sama doesn't like being shorted. The bear pig wrenched Kaido's head to the side and pressed the blade to Kaido's ear. "Now, which ear do you not want me to take?" Just before the bear pig could mutilate Kaido, a thud to his right drew his attention. The brute turned to see 2 bags of rice, a bottle of soy sauce, and a package of dried seaweed placed in a pile near the register with an elderly man standing next to it. "Excuse me, Sonny," the elderly man said. His voice was high-pitched and seemed to whistle with every word, probably due to the gap formed from his missing teeth. "But I'd like to buy these from Kaido-san, if you don't mind?" The bear pig let out a hum as he thought about what he was going to do. He looked down at Kaido and tapped him on the cheek with the flat of his blade, enjoying how the man flinched. "How much is the old man buying?" Confused, Kaido began to ramble out. 2 bags of rice, a bottle of Kaido was cut off by the tip of the tanto blade digging into his cheek. He tried to squirm away, but the brute had a vice grip on his head. "I can see what he's buying," the bear pig said as he ignored Kaido's scream of pain. "I want to know how much it's worth." "And 957 Rio," Kaido quickly replied. "Looks like it's your lucky day, Kaido." The bear pig removed his knife from Kaido's cheek and flicked the blade, spattering the floor with Kaido's blood. "Ring him up," the bear pig ordered as he released the shopkeeper. Kaido quickly scurried behind the register and began ringing up the elderly man who just stood there watching the events with a placid smile on his face, as if watching a shopkeeper get shaken down and nearly maimed was an everyday occurrence. "Why, your total is 957 Rio. Would you like a bag?" "As sure as a toad croaks, Sonny," the elderly man smiled as he stretched his liver-spotted hand over the counter to give Kaido his payment. Kaido's eyes slightly widened at the man's choice of words. "I'll be taking that," the bear pig interjected, as he thrust his big mitt underneath the elderly man's hand. "And I think 157 Rio's service fee is warranted." The bear pig threw a look at Kaido, a look that was begging the shopkeeper to argue with him just so he'd have an excuse. Yet Kaido simply nodded his head. TCH, the bear pig spun on his heel and lumbered out of the shop, yelling over his shoulder, "See you next week, Kaido." As soon as the brute left, it was as if a great pressure was lifted off of the store, a couple of the shoppers sending the elderly man grateful looks, while all of them refused to look Kaido in the eye. Something that Kaido didn't register because his eyes were still trained on the door that Gato's brute had left from. He had been so close to being maimed, maybe even killed. But before his mind could travel down that dark path, he felt something soft being pressed into his right cheek. A handkerchief, one that was slowly being stained red with blood. "Kaido-kun," the elderly man said in a deep voice rumbling with power, "explain." Unbidden, tears started streaming down the shopkeeper's face, the handkerchief now soaked with his blood and tears. "Jiraiya-sama." Scene change. "So your boyfriend's coming to visit tomorrow. Should I put out the good china and put on my best neck bandages?" Zabuza joked as he ran through some katas with Kubikuribocho, all under the watchful eye of Haku. She had told him he could get up and get some exercise, but that he was not allowed to channel any chakra until the day after tomorrow lest he risk damaging his tenketsu and chakra network. Haku rolled her eyes as she felt her bangs flutter from the force of Kubikuribocho as it cut through the air. "Yes, Zabuza-sama, Naruto-kun is coming over here tomorrow. And you will not threaten him." Zabuza paused before his next swing and turned towards his apprentice who was sitting on a recently created stump. Even without chakra, Zabuza could cut through the thick trees around their hideout, it just took more swings than usual. You really like this boy, Zabuza observed. Even in the dying light of the setting sun, which stretched the shadows of the trees and cast the clearing in shadows, Zabuza could see the soft smile on his apprentice's face. He has eyes like mine, Zabuza-sama, she said gently. When I look into them, I feel like I've found someone who can understand me. And do you think he'll understand? You haven't been entirely truthful, Haku, Zabuza warned her, not wanting to see his precious apprentice get her heart broken. Haku nodded her head. He'll understand. He might not be happy, but he'll understand. Because I like him. A lot. And I believe he feels the same way. Haku then gave Zabuza a bright smile that could light the darkest caves. You should have more faith, Zabuza-sama. It's your plan after all. I know, Zabuza acknowledged as he retook his stance, his feet shoulder-width apart with his left foot forward and his right foot back. Kubikuribocho held level with his waist. He took a step forward with his right foot as he slashed horizontally from right to left with a cut that would split a man's hips from his torso. But Zabuza didn't stop there, for with strength honed from years of using the mighty blade, Zabuza halted the blade's momentum, twisted his hips and executed a slash from left to right, the equivalent of a 1-2 combination with Kubikuribocho. The two slashes occurred in less than a second. Tomorrow, Zabuza stated as he reset his stance and prepared to strike again, everything will change. Scene change. It was a moonless night with the skies covered by clouds as Gato, flanked by his bodyguards Zora and Waraji, stood on his private dock, waiting for the Mizuki's agent. Boss, do we really need this Kirinin? Us, Waraji pointed to himself and jabbed a thumb towards his partner, and some of the boys are more than enough to murk Zabuza and those Konohanin. None of them noticed a subtle mist start to rise up from below the dock. Yeah, Zora agreed. Have you seen the reports from our boys in town? Other than Hitaki, the other ninja are brats. Zora then chuckled, though I hear the Mizuki's a brat too. The mist had surrounded their ankles, though for Gato it was more around his shins, and it was he who first noticed something was wrong. Boys, Gato focused on the swirling mist as it snaked around him, and he swore that he could feel the mist tightening around his ankles. Waraji snorted. If the Mizuki's a brat, then it explains why Zabuza is so weak. Zora covered his mouth and nose with the collar of his jacket as he lowered his voice to a rasp. I'm Momochi Zabuza, member of the overcompensating swordsmen of the mist. Waraji clutched his gut and burst out laughing. Oh, that's good. Do you think they all got big swords like Zabuza to hide their tiny dicks? Neither man noticed the mist thicken, but their boss did. Boys! Gato yelled as he felt the mist constrict around his legs, slicing into his skin. Boss? They asked as they looked down only for their eyes to bulge at the mist that had surrounded them. Acting on instinct, they reached for their swords as Waraji went to guard Gato's front, while Zora went to guard his boss's back. Though both found themselves rooted to the spot. What the hell? Waraji yelled as he tried to lift his feet only to roar out in pain as something in the mist was cutting into his ankles. Zora, not wanting to suffer the same fate, probed near his feet with the tip of his blade and had it catch on something. Guys, there's something around our feet. Bending down, he felt along his feet and felt something smooth, thin and razor-sharp. Zora's eyes widened. It's wire. A maniacal laugh broke out. They say you can tell a lot about a man by the size of their feet. A high-pitched voice cackled. I wonder, what will yours say? Before the voice's words could even register in their minds, Zora and Waraji screamed out in anguish as they toppled to the docks like felled trees, the mist stained red with blood. Gato looked down towards his two most loyal subordinates, and promptly vomited. Their feet were gone. Sliced away from them, leaving only bloody stubs with strips of flesh still clinging to their exposed bones. Gato was paralyzed. So shocked was he by the horrific scene that he didn't even register the screams of his bodyguards as they bled out. It wasn't until he felt something plopped on his head that he was broken out of his stupor. He could feel that whatever it was wet and was starting to leak into his hair. Looks like both of your men might have been projecting, Gato-san, the high-pitched voice said with glee. Gato heard footsteps as the owner of the voice walked to stand in front of Gato. The voice's owner was a tall, slim man with long, shaggy, straw-blonde hair wearing a white umbu mask, a sleeveless black shirt, matching pants, and Kirigaku's striped wrist and arm guards. The man was nearly 7 feet tall, dwarfing Gato's 5 feet 3 inches. The man introduced himself. I am Kuriara Kushimaru, Mizuki-sama's agent. Kushimaru bent down so that the forehead of his mask was resting against Gato's. Now, where is Zabu-chan? When Kakashi awoke that morning, the first thing he did was listen to the various sounds he had become familiar with over the past week. The creaks and groans of the house settling, the wind tousling the leaves of the tree outside his window, the gentle splash of the sea lapping at the dock. Everything sounded the same. And yet, as he laid in his futon and listened to the sounds, absently noting that Tsunami had just left her room and was heading to the bathroom and then the kitchen, her regular morning routine, he could not help but feel like something was off. Like something had changed or was going to change. Kakashi did a check of his body, flexing each muscle from his toes up to his ears, to see if he felt a negative response. Nothing. He scanned the room to see if anything was out of place. His flak jacket was where he left it in the corner, leaning against his backpack. A backpack that carried some extra changes of clothes. He kept his weapon sealed in a scroll which never left his person. Again, he found nothing out of the ordinary. Kakashi then sent out a minor pulse of chakra, a technique Umbu are taught to sus out hidden people, though the technique is imperfect when compared to the discerning eye of the Byakugan or the senses of a sensonin. And it was as Kakashi sent out a pulse that he found something, though what he found was the last thing he expected. Rather than finding some hidden foe prepped and waiting to strike, he instead found that his chakra felt disturbed. Not disturbed in the sense that he was under the thrall of a genjutsu, no, his chakra felt anxious. Anxious as if it could sense something bad was going to happen. To explain this feeling, one has to remember that chakra consists of two halves, the physical half, yang, and the spiritual half, yin. Much study has been done into the yang half of chakra, while very little study has been done into the yin half of chakra. This is because it is easy to measure how much a man weighs, but not how much his spirit weighs. Yet this is not to say that just because you cannot measure your spirit does not mean it does not exist. On the contrary, many veteran shinobi will swear up and down that the spiritual half of chakra does exist because it has helped to save their lives, warning them of imminent ambushes seconds before their physical senses sight, hearing, taste, touch, and smell could discern anything was amiss. When asked what tipped them off to the ambush, to a one their response was, "I felt something was wrong." To the lay person this might appear as nothing more than superstition, and yet, one need not look further than the priestess bloodline of Oni no Kuni to see that chakra is capable of granting visions of the future. So why would it not be capable of giving premonitions? Suffice to say, chakra is capable of many strange and wondrous things, and only a fool would ignore their own chakra when it was giving them a warning, and Kakashi was no fool. The only question was, what was it warning of? The feeling of anxiousness persisted throughout the day, to the point where Kakashi couldn't even find enjoyment from his favorite book. It was as he, his squad and his client's family were sitting at the dining table, having a late lunch, when he got an inkling of what his chakra was warning him of. "Hey, Kakashi-sensei, is it alright if I go meet up with Haku-chan?" Naruto asked. It was a normal request, one that Kakashi had granted without fail every time. Though not without Kakashi having a shadow clone follow the boy, for his protection of course. Although, if Kakashi's clone happened to observe something noteworthy and just so happened to have a notebook on hand, well, you wouldn't expect a dog not to bark just like you wouldn't expect a writer not to write, right? However, the second Kakashi heard his student's request, the anxious feeling his chakra was giving off intensified. Something was going to happen at that meeting, he could feel it, but he needed more information to formulate a plan. And so, he asked Naruto, sounding casual, "Oh, and what are you two going to be doing?" "She wants me to meet her guardian," the blonde answered, as he raised a clump of rice to his lips. "Guardian? I was unaware Haku had a guardian," Kakashi commented. "Do you know who her guardian is?" Naruto swallowed his food. "No." "Do you know what her guardian does for a living?" Kakashi lost his casual tone, something Sakura and Sasuke picked up on as they lowered their chopsticks and observed the conversation between their teammate and sensei. Naruto placed down his chopsticks, as he turned his full attention to Kakashi. "I know he works in private security." Kakashi's visible eye narrowed. And where are you meeting?" Tsunami picked up on the growing tension in the room and decided to excuse herself from the table and usher Inari out of the room. Naruto shrugged, as he placed his hands underneath the table, thankful that Tsunami had just left because it made what he was about to do much easier. Crossing his fingers in a cross-shaped seal, he focused on summoning a shadow clone underneath the table without smoke and sound. As he was doing so, Naruto answered his sensei's question. "At her house, I guess?" "Do you know where her house is?" Kakashi pressed. Tazuna decided at this point in time that discretion was the larger part of valor, and excused himself from the table to go and join his daughter in the kitchen. "I don't know, what's with the third degree? You didn't have a problem with me meeting with her before." Naruto glared, both at the line of questioning and the focus he had to put into pulling off the technique. And as if God himself was listening, Sakura decided to chime in. "I agree with Naruto, you didn't seem to have a problem with him meeting her before, what's the problem now?" Sakura wondered. Although she hasn't met this Haku girl, she was thankful that her presence has managed to steer Naruto's affections away from herself. Naruto nearly cried tears of joy for Sakura, unknowingly, drawing attention away from him and onto herself, because it allowed him to finish summoning the shadow clone underneath the table, unseen and unheard. And not a moment too soon, for Kakashi's response to Sakura had Naruto seeing red. That was because he met her in a public place, or I had a shadow clone following him, Kakashi explained. What? Naruto shot up out of his seat, his chair falling over. Sasuke tensed his shoulders and Sakura looked about to admonish her teammate, physically. But Naruto didn't care. How could Kakashi-sensei spy on him? Before he could get started on a rant, Kakashi cut him off. "Genin, name and registration number," Kakashi ordered, his tone of voice causing Sasuke and Sakura to stiffen in their seats. Naruto's back stiffened, his eyes losing focus as he stood at attention and said in a monotone, "Uzumaki Naruto, 012607. Kakashi had Naruto stand at attention for 10 seconds, watching as the tension left the blonde's shoulders. When he was sure Naruto had calmed down enough, he calmly explained his actions. "I followed you because we do not know who Haku is, nor her intentions. For all we know, she could be an enemy." Now, Kakashi held up a hand to stall Naruto's protests. "I will say from my observations that she doesn't appear like she wants to harm you. Quite the opposite, in fact. Nevertheless, you can never be too careful in our world." "Are you saying I can't meet with her?" Naruto growled through his teeth. "I never said that. What I'm saying is that we are going to treat this like a potential ambush. We'll both create shadow clones, one going in your place while my shadow clone will trail it. If there's no danger, then you'll be free to arrange a meeting at a neutral location." Kakashi saw that Naruto had slightly relaxed once he had heard the plan, unknowing that Naruto had made his own plans. "And why don't you just go with him, sensei?" Sakura asked, her tone respectful. She didn't know that her laid-back teacher was capable of sounding so harsh. Kakashi gave Sakura an eye smile as he pointed at the swing door that led to the kitchen where Tazuna and his family were waiting out the argument. Sakura blushed as she let out a sheepish chuckle. "Right." Kakashi chuckled as he stood up from the table, placed the index and middle fingers of his hands into the shape of a cross, flared his chakra and was soon enveloped in a cloud of white smoke. When the smoke dissipated, another Kakashi was standing next to him. "So, ready to go?" Naruto frowned, as he tapped his foot in front of his clone, a signal for his clone to be ready to use Kawarimi, replacement. "I don't like tricking Haku-chan like this. I promised that I would meet with her guardian, not a clone." The real Kakashi nodded. "I know, but this is for your own safety. Do you understand?" Naruto gave Kakashi his signature grin as he squinted his eyes shut and placed his hands behind his head as he tapped his foot. "I understand your plan, Kakashi-sensei." Naruto placed his hands in the same hand sign as Kakashi, charged his chakra, and was covered by a plume of thick white smoke that engulfed his side of the room. When the smoke cleared, there were two Narutos standing there. Kakashi stared at the two clones and threw one of his chopsticks at the Naruto standing on the right, piercing through his right shoulder. That Naruto looked shocked for a second before he dispelled. "A clone. What was that for?" the remaining Naruto yelled, as he felt a hand tap his left foot. The original was now underneath the table. Kakashi shrugged. "I wanted to know which one was the real one. Now make another clone, and this time, use less smoke." Naruto nodded as he tapped his foot in front of the original, signaling for him to be ready to make the switch. The clone then put his hands into the cross-shaped hand seal, charged his chakra and was covered by a plume of white smoke that only covered Naruto's side of the table. Again, when the smoke cleared, there were two Narutos standing there. Kakashi pointed to the Naruto on the right. "You're going with my clone." The Naruto on the right turned to his other self, looking dejected. "Sorry, boss. Looks like he got us." The other Naruto also looked dejected. "I know, it was a good try though." "Nice try, Naruto," the real Kakashi said as he ruffled the leftward Naruto's hair, "but it will take more preparation than that if you want to get one over on a Jonin." Kakashi motioned for the two clones to leave, not noticing a third Naruto, underneath the table, who was grinning like a loon. Scene change. "I'm so glad that you're coming to meet my guardian," Haku said as they walked, her left arm looped through his right with her fingers threaded with his. She enjoyed how warm Naruto's hand was, especially how he was stroking the top of her thumb with his own, a very relaxing gesture. "It means a lot to me." Naruto gently squeezed her hand. "It's no problem." Naruto enjoyed how smooth and cool Haku's hands were, though he couldn't help but note that she did have some calluses on her palms, as if she was used to handling rough tools. Naruto mentally shook his head. Haku-chan's not a ninja. She could have gotten those calluses from picking herbs, right? Naruto was so distracted with his thoughts that he didn't even notice that Haku was asking him a question. Though he did notice when she stopped walking, raised their held hands, and placed a soft, lingering kiss on his knuckles. When Haku was sure that she had Naruto's attention, she lifted her lips and shot him a teasing grin. It's not nice to ignore a lady. Now, what's on your mind? Naruto rubbed the back of his hand with his free hand as he avoided looking her in the eye. It's nothing, just thinking of some stuff. When he caught a look of the growing pout on her face, he quickly amended, some ninja stuff. Sorry, but I can't tell you more. Naruto shot her an apologetic grin. Haku studied Naruto for a few seconds, her mind awhirl. He's avoiding eye contact and his shoulders are tense. Anxious? Maybe? About what? Me? Is he breaking up with me? Haku's heart nearly leapt into her throat at that thought when her rational mind took over. No, he would be avoiding physical contact if that were the case. Does he suspect something? Haku decided to ease her anxiety by teasing Naruto and giving him a hint of her and Zabuza's plans. Well, I hope that when we're at your village you can tell me more about this ninja stuff. Naruto mouthed the word village as his brain processed what she said. Wait, you want to move to Konoha? Yes, Haku nodded. My guardian and I would like to have a more permanent place to call home, and I can't imagine a better place than Konoha. After all, aren't I dating the future Hokage? Dating? Naruto's eyes bugged out. We're dating? Haku dramatically gasped, dropping Naruto's hand as she turned her back on him and took a few steps away. I didn't know you liked to string girls along. String along? No, I would never string you along. Naruto denied as he placed his hands on Haku's shoulders and turned her around and looked her right in the eye. I'd love to date you. Really? Haku asked, sounding skeptical. Naruto vigorously nodded. Yay! Haku cheered as she proceeded to hug the stuffing out of Naruto. Now, let's go, my guardian is waiting. Without waiting for a response, Haku grabbed Naruto's hand and dragged him towards Zabuza's base, unaware of a one-eyed shadow clone following them from above. Her body language seems genuine, though I'd know for sure if I could use the Sharingan without the risk of popping. The Kakashi clone shook his head. The real me needs to get back into shape. Scene change. The sun was beginning to set as Jiraiya was walking down a well-worn dirt path towards the house of Tazuna the bridge builder. According to Kaido, Tazuna was on the top of Gado's kill list, and because of this, Tazuna went to Konoha to hire a team of ninja, one of whom Jiraiya knew personally. So, Kakashi finally leashed himself to a genin team? Jiraiya mused, must be some brats if he passed them. Or the council and Sarutobi-sensei forced him. Jiraiya shrugged. I'll hear it from the horse's mouth soon enough. A rustling from some bushes off to his left caused the man to pause. To any casual observer, it looked like the man was simply admiring the scenery, but to an experienced shinobi, Jiraiya looked primed and ready to kill someone in 6 different ways before they could blink. Jiraiya threw his senses towards the bush, and relaxed when he felt the familiar warmth he associated with his toad summons. Though that warmth soon fled when a green toad with red cheeks and a white underbelly hopped out of the bushes with poor tidings. Jiraiya-sama. Bad news, Gado's working with Kiri. Jiraiya's eyes narrowed. What do you mean, Yoshi? Explain. The toad frantically hopped up and down. I saw Gado speaking with a Kiri-nin. The guy from Kiri was super tall and wore an oinen mask. He also had a weird sword that looked like a sewing needle. Kuriara Kushimaru, Jiraiya murmured under his breath as his mind tried to rationalize this piece of information. Why would the Mizukage send away his last loyal swordsman during a civil war? Jiraiya needed more information. He crouched down in front of the excitable toad. Yoshi, tell me what happened. Yoshi stopped jumping up and down as he recounted his mission. I trailed one of Gado's goons, like you asked, and I followed him to a warehouse a few miles away from town. Gado's running drugs. Unsurprising, Jiraiya commented, but what does that have to do with Gado working with Kiri? Yoshi croaked indignantly, I don't know. All I know is that I saw Gado standing at the window to his office next to the tall guy. Did you hear their conversation? Jiraiya pressed. Information was a shinobi's lifeblood, and that went doubly so for spy masters. No, Yoshi shook his head, I was too far away to hear. Although, Gado did look pale standing next to that Kushimaru guy. Jiraiya snorted, I don't blame him. If even half of the stories I've heard about that man are true. Jiraiya trailed off as he recalled what he knew of Kushimaru, highly skilled swordsman, and a sadist with a predilection for crucifixion with his sword, Nobari. Jiraiya stood up, he needed to get this information to Kakashi, and fast. Thanks for the report. See if you can find out where Gado's base is. Jiraiya dismissed the scout toad and started sprinting towards Tazuna's house, the setting sun beginning to dip below the horizon, and casting long shadows. Scene change. The sun had set by the time Haku and Naruto had arrived. We're here. Haku announced as she waved her arm towards a conical building a couple of stories tall that was suspended off of the ground by wires attached to the surrounding trees. The entrance to the building was a wooden rampway that was also suspended by wires that were attached to the bottom of the building. All in all, the building looked like a hanging, upside-down top. Naruto had a nervous grin on his face as he stared at the strange building. Haku-chan, what did you say your guardian did again? Private security, she answered as she began dragging the blonde up the rampway and towards the entry door. Naruto's eyebrow twitched. There's no way a guy working private security lives in a place like this, Naruto thought. When they reached the entry door, Naruto turned to Haku and just decided to ask her flat out, Haku, are you trying to kill me? What? Haku gasped as she let go of the door handle and spun to face Naruto. I would never kill you. She won't, a rough voice rasped from behind Naruto, but I might. Before Naruto could spin around, he felt a large hand grab him by the nape of his neck as he was lifted into the air and carried through the entry door. Up in the trees, Kakashi's shadow clone was dumbfounded, a single thought playing through its mind as he moved to infiltrate the building through a window on the lower level. Zabuza's alive? The clone was so preoccupied by that thought that he didn't notice a subtle mist began to roll in and surround the hideout. Nor did he notice a nearly 7-foot-tall man appear from behind one of the thick tree trunks. Naughty Zabu-chan, what are you doing with a Konohanin? Kushimaru wondered aloud. He thought about it for a few seconds, then shrugged it off as non-important. Zabuza would die tonight, so any plans he had were all for naught. Kushimaru then pulled some of the mist from the air to form a water clone of himself. He ordered the clone, go watch Zabu-chan, I'll give you the signal when I'm done preparing out here. The clone nodded as it went to infiltrate the building from another window on the lower level. Scene change. So, brat, you want to date Haku? Zabuza asked as he dropped the blonde on the floor, suppressing an amused chuckle as he saw the blonde genin spin around and get himself into a boxer's stance. He's improved, Zabuza noted, but he still has some holes in his defense. Raise your right hand. What? Naruto asked, sounding confused, but he refused to lower his stance as he quickly glanced around the room he was brought to. 4 exits, the entryway he was brought through, a ladder behind him, a window to his right that was 10 feet above him and a window to his left that was near his height but was 20 feet away. The room featured 3 target dummies peppered with saban, as well as crates with, presumably, other shinobi supplies. You're leaving your right side open, Zabuza pointed out. Naruto blinked as he looked down at his right side. Was he leaving himself open? He didn't think so. Was this all a trick by Zabuza to lower his guard? As if Zabuza could read Naruto's mind, the missing nin said, if I wanted to kill you, I would have done it. Now raise your right hand so that it's just about level with your chin, that's it. Balance your weight on the balls of your feet. Good, you're looking more like a competent shinobi, especially since you've gotten rid of that atrocious eyesore of a jumpsuit. Hey! Orange is awesome, damn it! Naruto dropped his stance as he pointed an accusing finger at Zabuza for the slight towards his favorite color. It ain't the right color for a shinobi, brat, Zabuza growled. What would you know, no brows? Naruto mocked. Why, you little. Zabuza's right hand reached over his right shoulder for his sword, but before he could wrap his hand around Kubikuribocho's handle, he felt an ice-cold chop to the top of his head. Zabuza-sama! You are not going to kill Naruto-kun! Haku admonished her master as she shook off the bits of ice that clung to her hand. Unaware of the fact that Naruto was watching her with widened eyes, having just borne witness to a violent side of Haku that he had never seen before. Zabuza rubbed the growing bump on his head as he threw a pitying look towards Naruto. Brat, if Haku treats you any way she treats me, I pity you. But Haku-chan's never hit me, Naruto stated. What? Zabuza's chin was in danger of ripping his neck bandages because of how far his jaw dropped at that revelation. Then how does she get you to stop doing things then? Naruto simply blushed and started to study a very interesting crack on the ceiling, while Haku simply giggled as she walked over to Naruto, looped her arm through his and rested her head on his shoulder. She then turned to Zabuza and said 2 words, Hisame-sensei. Zabuza crossed his arms over his sleeveless black shirt as he turned his head and studied a very interesting crack on the wall, thankful that his neck bandages hid the slight blush that stood out on his light grayish skin. Right, moving on. Zabuza then addressed Naruto. Brat, you must be wondering why you're here and why I'm alive, right? Naruto nodded, as he threw a wary glance towards Haku. Zabuza noted this. Don't worry, if Haku had wanted to hurt you she would have done so by now. Zabuza unconsciously rubbed his neck. She can be quite vicious with those saman of hers. Naruto looked closely at the target dummies and saw that one of them had 2 saban pierced through its neck. It looked just like. Naruto jumped away from Haku and pointed a finger at her. You're the Oinin who took out Zabuza. But he said Naruto pointed at Zabuza, that you were and… Naruto pointed back at Haku, then to Zabuza, then to Haku again, until finally, he threw up his hands and yelled out, "Just what the hell is going on?" Zabuza stepped forward. "Listen up, brat, because I'm only going to explain this once. You remember when I fought your teacher?" Seeing Naruto nod, Zabuza continued, "And do you remember what I said about Kiri's graduation ceremony?" Naruto's flinch told Zabuza that the blonde remembered. "What he didn't tell you is that Kiri was even worse than that. Have you ever heard of the bloodline purges?" "No, I haven't," Naruto responded, "but what does this have to do with you wanting to meet with me?" "I'm getting to it," Zabuza growled. "During these purges, people like Haku were hunted down to extinction." Zabuza gestured towards the girl in question, a girl who had yet to move from the spot where Naruto had separated from her. She was looking down towards the ground, her bangs shadowing her face. Naruto gasped, "But why?" "There have been a lot of civil wars in Kiri, and people with bloodlines featured prominently in all of them. So much so that people began seeing bloodline holders as harbingers of war." Zabuza shrugged, irrational, "but because of this view, you had people start to believe that if they got rid of bloodline holders the wars would stop." Zabuza looked towards Haku, and his eyes softened, but the wars didn't stop, regardless of how many bloodline holders they purged. Naruto walked over to Haku, lifted her chin and flinched when he saw the look in her eyes. The warmth and playfulness he had come to associate with her chocolate brown eyes were long gone, replaced with a cold lifelessness that he had seen reflected in the mirror more times than he would care to admit. Naruto did what he did on their first date, hold her to his chest and tried to shield her from the cruelness of the world. Naruto nodded over Haku's shoulder, motioning Zabuza to continue. "It was one day that I was on patrol that I met Haku, and saw that she had the same eyes that I had, cold, lifeless. She had no purpose, so I decided to give her one as a shinobi. I trained her, teaching her what I knew for the next couple of years, and things were good, for a time. Then Yagura came to power, and everything got worse. Under Yagura, Kiri really lived up to its nickname of the Village of the Bloody Mist." "How bad?" Naruto asked, though he soon regretted it. Zabuza took a shaky breath. Yagura allowed Kushimaru, another swordsman, to string up dissenters along the outside of the Kage's office, while they were alive. Some of them were children. Naruto pulled back from the hug to look down at Haku, just to make sure that she was still there. And he was glad he did, because otherwise he would have never caught the slight movement from the window to his left as he heard a high-pitched voice state, "Those were good times, Zabu-chan." Naruto threw Haku to his left as a silver blur flew through the window, cutting a few strands of Haku's hair as she was falling to the ground, as it continued on its path through Naruto's right shoulder to bury itself in the wall behind him. Naruto let out a yell of pain as he reflexively fell to his knees and reached towards his right shoulder, or at least, he tried to. He found that he was kept standing by some unknown force. When he looked at his shoulder, he saw some of his blood hanging in the air. Naruto focused his eyes and saw that his blood was clinging to some razor wire. "Naruto!" Haku yelled out as she saw the blonde's bloody right shoulder. She got up, her hands glowing white as she channeled her Hayatan chakra so that she could seal Naruto's wound with ice. But before she could even take 2 steps, Zabuza barked out, "Stop! Zabuza! Naruto's hurt. I need." Haku began to plead with her master, but she was cut off. "I know," he said, his eyes never leaving the window to his right, as his hand grasped the handle of Kabikura Bocho. "But if you take 1 step closer, that wire through his shoulder will cut him in half." Zabuza roared at the window, "Isn't that right, Kushimaru?" "Ruin my fun, why don't you, Zabu-chan?" Kushimaru said as he climbed through the window, a loop of razor wire wound tightly around his right hand. Dismemberment loses half its fun when the prey expects it. "Why are you here? Isn't the war still going on in Kiri?" Zabuza asked as he put some more weight on his right foot, ready to spring at a moment's notice. Kushimaru raised his left hand and wagged his finger. "You move and I channel my wind chakra through this wire, and you know just how messy that can be." When Kushimaru saw Zabuza lean back, he continued, "That's better. As for why I'm here, a little imp told us that he had a certain demon under his employ, and that the demon was injured. It was too good an opportunity to pass up. Although," Kushimaru narrowed his eyes behind his mask, "it appears your injuries have been greatly exaggerated." "Gato," Zabuza growled out the name with all of the malice in his heart, sounding more demon than man. "And what does the imp get out of this?" "Distribution rights for his drugs in Kiri." Kushimaru then pointed at Haku, and the bloodline freak. "I believe he wants to turn her into his whore." "Don't you dare touch her!" Naruto yelled out, his voice sounding rougher, deeper than usual. If one were to take a close look at his eyes, they would see that they had started to turn from his sapphire blue to a bright violet that was tinged with red. Kushimaru glanced towards the boy. The only sounds prey should make our screaming. Kushimaru tugged on the wire in his hand and rolled his wrist to the right, getting grunts of pain from the boy as the wire sliced through the muscles and bones of his shoulder. Oh, someone has a pain tolerance, Kushimaru noted, sounding gleeful. Those prey make the best sounds. Unknown to three of the occupants in the room, a shadow clone of one Hatake Kakashi was watching from the other window, waiting for his opportunity to intervene. Though if the blonde could hear the Jonin's inner dialogue, he would be more concerned about what the Jonin was planning to do to him, rather than the hole through his shoulder. If this boy gets through this alive, I'll make his previous punishment look like a walk in the park. When the clone saw Kushimaru start to torture his student, he saw his opportunity. He leaped through the window, throwing a brace of shuriken at Kushimaru's right arm as he was dropping. Then as he landed, he charged a Chidori, 1,000 birds, in his right hand, the blue lightning crackling and chirping like its namesake, as he channeled chakra to his legs and rushed towards Kushimaru. The clone's plan was half effective. While he was able to separate Kushimaru from his wire, he was unable to hit the man with his Chidori, due to the tunnel vision one experiences when using the technique without the Sharingan. Kushimaru sidestepped the clone, and when he was about to dispel it with a chop to its throat, Zabuza came in and beheaded Kushimaru. Only to be shocked when the head and body turned into water, a water clone. Zabuza didn't even have the time to think about how or when Kushimaru made the switch, when he felt a sandaled foot kick him in the back and send him flying out the window. Let's play Zabu-chan. Just before Kakashi's clone ran out of chakra, he turned towards Naruto and ordered him to run, exploding in a puff of white smoke as he did so. Kakashi and Naruto were sitting on the roof of Tazuna's house watching the sunset. Though unknown to the Jonin at this time, the blonde sitting next to him was a shadow clone. What will we do when Haku-chan doesn't turn out to be an enemy? The clone asked his sensei. Kakashi let out a sigh. If she isn't an enemy, then I guess that's up to you and Haku to decide. However, Kakashi closed his one eye as he prepared himself for his student's inevitable blow-up. If she turns out to be an enemy, she might have to be eliminated. Kakashi was not disappointed. What do you mean we would kill her? Naruto roared so loud that Kakashi swore he saw the ocean recede slightly. Might, I said might, Kakashi repeated until the genin had calmed down. Though it's possible, I don't think it's probable, okay? Well, I don't think it's possible at all, Naruto huffed as he crossed his arms, turned away from his sensei and looked towards the dirt road. Though his planned pouting session was interrupted by the appearance of an unknown man with waist-length white hair, dressed in some kabuki garb, running down said road. Hey sensei, is there some traveling show in Nami that we don't know about? Kakashi looked where his student was looking, and was promptly shocked. Jiraiya-sama, he gasped, what's he doing in Nami? Jiraiya-sama? Must be some important dude, for sensei to react like this. Naruto rubbed his chin as he examined the man who was getting closer to the house, and seemed to be making a beeline towards the roof. Before Naruto could ask his sensei who Jiraiya was, Kakashi had jumped down from the roof and sprinted to meet Jiraiya. Naruto shrugged and followed his sensei. Jiraiya-sama, Kakashi greeted, what brings you to Nami no Kuni? Sensei wanted me to look into something, Jiraiya told him, though I was surprised to find Nami in such dire straits. Tell me, have you had any run-ins with Gado or his associates? Kakashi nodded as he began to explain what happened. Yes, my team and I ran into one of the 7 swordsmen. You've already faced Kurire Kushimaru? Jiraiya's outburst cut off Kakashi. Though Kakashi was more confused by the content of Jiraiya's shout than the volume. Kurire Kushimaru? Kakashi parroted. Yes, Kushimaru, tall guy with shaggy blonde hair and a predilection for crucifixion. You know him? Jiraiya asked sarcastically. Hey, what's going on? Naruto asked as he came to a stop next to his sensei. Beat it, brat. This is a grown-up convert. Jiraiya began to tell off who he assumed was one of Kakashi's students when he paused and actually looked at the kid. Spiky blonde hair, piercing blue eyes, give the kid a more angular face and get rid of the whiskers and the kid would be a spitting image of Minato. Minato? Naruto tilted his head. My name's Naruto, Uzumaki Naruto, future Hokage of Konohagakure. Naruto finished his introduction with a bright grin. Jiraiya shook his head to clear the image of a young Minato overlapping his son. Sorry, brat, you just reminded me of someone else. Regardless, I was talking with your sensei about Kurire Kushimaru, Kakashi stated, cutting off Jiraiya. Kakashi looked pale, as if he had just seen a ghost. And given that his shadow clone had just dispelled, it's safe to say he just had. Yeah, Kushimaru's Jiraiya was about to tell Kakashi what he and his toads discovered when the Jonin cut him off again. Kushimaru is on the island. He's here to hunt down Momochi Zabuza, and he's wounded Naruto. What? Jiraiya turned the same shade of pale as Kakashi, as he lifted a shaky finger and pointed it towards the Naruto standing in front of him. Then who's this? Jiraiya was beginning to lose it. He had just met his godson, and now you're telling him he's off fighting some sewing sadist? A shadow clone, Kakashi growled as he leveled a glare so fierce at the clone that it could curdle stone. Though how, I don't know. How could you let a genin fool you? Jiraiya sounded incredulous. Guys, shouldn't we be going to rescue the real me? The clone asked, reminding the two men of the more pressing issue at hand. Both men blinked and soon got their mission faces back on. Tell me where he is, Kakashi, Jiraiya ordered as he started gathering a massive amount of chakra. His godson was in danger, and he'd be damned if he didn't use everything in his power to protect him. There's no such thing as overkill when it comes to protecting what you love. Kakashi pointed behind Jiraiya, a couple of miles west through the forest. It's a conical building, you can't miss it. Jiraiya nodded as bit his right thumb and flew through 5 hand seals: boar, dog, bird, monkey, and ending on ram. Kuchios no jutsu, summoning technique. Jiraiya yelled out as he slammed his right hand on the ground and was soon surrounded by a plume of white smoke. Jiraiya boy, why have you summoned us? We were just about to settle down for dinner? An elderly male voice asked from inside the smoke. Ma made her special cricket casserole. Yeah, I don't want my dinner to go cold, an elderly female voice said. The smoke cleared to reveal 2 toads. The male was green with white hair styled in a mohawk, thick eyebrows of the same color, and he was wearing a simple cape. The female was lime green with purple marking the back and top of her head and was wearing a simple cape as well. These were the 2 great sage toads of Mount Miyaboku, Fukasaku and Shima. But to members and summoners of the Toad clan, they are known as Pa and Ma. I'm sorry, Pa and Ma, but I need your help and time is of the essence, Jiraiya told them. I need to enter Sannin Moto, Sage Mode, Jiraiya requested, his coal eyes burning fiercely. What? Both Toad sages croaked out at the same time. Shima looked stunned while Fukasaku decided to take a glance at their surroundings. They were on a dirt road in front of a building that looked like an old fishing inn, with 2 other people around them. One person was Hitaki Kakashi, someone that Fukasaku had met before, while the other one was a blonde boy that nearly made Fukasaku's eyes leave his skull because he looked like the spitting image of one of their previous summoners, Namake's Minato. He just about gasped out Minato's name, but was able to catch himself in time. It was up to the boy's godfather or the Sandame to tell him of his heritage. Fukasaku noted that, while both Kakashi and the boy looked tense, they didn't appear to be in any immediate danger. Nor did they appear to be any immediate threat to their summoner, and certainly not threatening enough to warrant Jiraiya summoning he and his wife, Fukasaku commented as such. Jiraiya boy, I think summoning us to deal with Kakashi boy and this tadpole might be a bit excessive, don't ya think? Fukasaku's comments finally broke Shima out of her stupor, and made her aware of the 2 other people surrounding them, and unlike her husband, she had no such control over her mental filter when she laid eyes on Naruto. Honey, look, Shima gasped as she placed a hand on her husband's shoulder and pointed at the blonde boy who was looking quite confused by the conversation. It's Minato-chan's tadpole. Fukasaku palmed his face, producing a meaty smack. Jiraiya and Kakashi were stunned stupid, not expecting Shima to reveal state secrets. Naruto just looked confused, the gears of his mind grinding as they tried to process what the old lady toad said. Minato's tadpole? Naruto muttered, a tadpole's a baby toad baby. Naruto's eyes bugged out as he gasped out a question he hadn't asked in years. Do you know who my father is? Jiraiya recovered from his shock and sent Kakashi an umbu hand signal and gestured towards the clone. Terminate. Shima nodded her head. Of course I do, silly. He was before the Naruto clone could hear her answer. He was dispelled by a chop to the back of the neck. Fukasaku turned on his wife, and began grinding his forehead into her own. Damn it, woman. You know the boy isn't supposed to know about his heritage yet. Shima pushed back, her eyes fierce as they rehashed an argument the couple has had off and on for the past 13 years. Well, ya old coot, forgive me for forgetting such a stupid rule. A tadpole should know where he came from. Both toads were releasing growls that would make a tiger envious, as they glared one another down. Before their argument could come to blows, Jiraiya knelt down and separated the 2, while shouting, Enough! We don't have time for this. The tadpole you're arguing about is in danger, and I need to get to him yesterday. Both toads gasped, turned to each other, nodded they would be discussing this later and hopped on Jiraiya's shoulders. Lead on, Fukasaku commanded, as he and his wife began gathering nature chakra, expanding their senses as they did so. Jiraiya nodded, charged chakra to his legs, and shot off towards the west, cratering the ground from his push-off. Jiraiya was a blur of white as he rushed through the forest, leaping from branch to branch. He was confident that with Sage Mode he would utterly annihilate anything in his path, though his plan hit a snag a few minutes into his journey when a wave of malevolence hit the two-toad's senses and made them lose their concentration. QB. What? Jiraiya nearly lost his footing, but recovered in time as he stopped on a branch. Has the seal broken? No, Fukasaku said, though you will want to have a chakra-suppressing seal handy, just in case he draws on more of the beast's chakra. We don't have time for that, Jiraiya argued. It takes me 5 minutes to draw one of those seals. I'll just use the Gojio Fuin, 5-pronged seal, to cut off his access to its chakra. But what if Fukasaku was going to continue the argument when his wife cut him off and hopped off Jiraiya's shoulder and onto the tree trunk in front of them? Jiraiya-chan, make the seal. Pa, gather nature chakra. I'll go watch over the tadpole. Before either man could argue, Shima shot off, a purple blur to their eyes. Fukasaku let out a sigh, a fond smile on his face. Make the seal. I pity anyone who gets in between Ma and a tadpole in danger. Scene change. When Zabuza was defenestrated, and his back made contact with the ground outside his base, only one thought went through his mind. Damn, if Kushamara had come a day later I could be using chakra right now. Indeed, the medicine that Haku had given him to accelerate his healing was still in his system. He knows this because as he was falling, he instinctively channeled chakra to his back to cushion his fall, something all shinobi are taught to do. Unfortunately for Zabuza, when he did so he felt lances of pain running up and down his spine, feeling as if Haku had decided to use his back as target practice for her Senban. Suffice to say he did not have the most pleasant of landings, but he still had the presence of mind to curl himself into a ball and roll along the ground to disperse the force of his fall. As Zabuza got to his feet, he felt that the ground was softer than he remembered, as if it had been recently dug up. Before his mind could even process this information, his body reacted. Zabuza jumped into the air, while simultaneously stabbing Kubikuribocho straight into the dirt so he could stand on its cross guard, just as a web of wires rose from the ground and sought to chop off his legs. The wires tried to constrict Kubikuribocho, but were severed when they came into contact with its edge. Is that the best you've got? Zabuza yelled into the mist with more confidence than he felt. He reached for his right hip only to curse, as he realized that he left his hip pouch in the base. No other weapons. No chakra. This is setting up for a grand old time, Zabuza mentally snarked as he was coming to the realization that he was, in scientific terms, fucked. But he would be damned if he went down before making Kushamara bleed. Zabuza closed his eyes, taking a deep breath to calm his racing heart that was pounding in his ears, and waited. He waited, and he listened. A rustle of leaves to his left was all the warning Zabuza needed to hop off his sword, grabbing the handle as he did so, and not a moment too soon as Nuabari came shooting through the mist, passing through where Zabuza's head had just been, missing his head by inches as it disappeared into the mist behind him. But Zabuza wasn't out of the woods yet. Landing on the ground, Zabuza hefted his blade and held it behind his back as he spun to the right just as Nuabari returned from where it disappeared and dug a furrow into the flat of Kubikuribocho's blade, leaving a trail of blue sparks and the sound of screeching metal in its wake as it once again vanished into the surrounding mist and into the hands of its owner. Zabuza turned to where Nuabari vanished, drawing his blade from his back and holding it in front of him as he took a quick step to his left as Nuabari came screaming at him again. Zabuza was able to bat the sewing needle to his right and send it flying into a tree, but it came at a cost. Nuabari hit the scar it left previously and was able to snap the blade, leaving Zabuza standing there with a third of his blade left in his hand and the other 2/3 on, falling to the ground with a big thunk. Ah, did poor Zabuchan weak his blade? Kushamara taunted, his voice surrounding Zabuza. Don't worry, she'll be just fine, after I feed her your blood, Zabuza snarled as he gave his shortened cleaver a few practice swings. Kushimaru ignored the comment, as he observed his prey. Zabuza had finished readjusting to the new weight of his blade and had decided to stand in a defensive stance behind the broken piece of his blade. Kushimaru had never fought Zabuza personally, though he had seen him fight, and he knew that Zabuza was usually more aggressive. Kushimaru narrowed his eyes. Was Zabuza trying to lure him into a trap? Kushimaru decided to test this theory using his favorite method, taunting. Kushimaru cackled, feed her my blood? And how are you going to do that standing over there? Kushimaru watched Zabuza's body language for any sort of tell. A sudden tenseness, a witty retort, an angry outburst, anything at all. But Zabuza simply maintained his stance. Kushimaru drummed his fingers on the tree limb he was sitting on, his right hand still holding on to Nuabari's wire. Zabuchan could still be luring me into a trap, or maybe Kushimaru stopped drumming his fingers as a dark chuckle left his lips. The little imp was right, Zabuchan was injured in his fight with Kakashi. Kushimaru tightened his grip on Nuabari's wire. He was going to have so much fun. Zabuza took a deep breath as he heard Kushimaru begin cackling like a hyena and the mist around him thickened. Scene change. When Haku saw Zabuza get kicked out the window, she was already rushing towards Naruto, her hands glowing white with trails of white fog leaking from them. She was thankful that dispelling the water clone of Kushimaru also dispelled the razor wire in Naruto's shoulder, because she didn't want to seal his wound with the wire still in there. Naruto-kun, she gasped, as she stepped closer to him and looked at his wound. Nuabari had torn straight through his right shoulder, muscle and bone, and had left Naruto's right arm limp. Haku's eyes moistened. With that kind of damage, it's entirely possible that Naruto would lose function in his right arm. I'm so sorry. It's okay, Haku-chan, Naruto assured her as his eyes began to lighten and his whiskers returned to normal. Though he could still feel something bubbling beneath the surface of his skin, waiting to be unleashed. I heal fast. I'm just glad you're okay. It's not okay. Haku shook her head as she placed her hands on Naruto's shoulder and began sealing it, slowly, as to ensure that the ice wouldn't have any cracks or faults. You shouldn't have gotten hurt. Naruto hissed as he felt the ice begin to form around his entry wound. Through gritted teeth he asked, who was the sewing freak? Kuriura Kushimaru, one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist, and the Mizuki's loyal dog. Haku spat with such venom that Naruto was glad that Enko had helped train his immune system with her summons. And why do you hate him, other than the obvious reasons? Naruto gestured towards his shoulder that Haku was still sealing. The ice had covered the entry wound and was now creeping around and over his shoulder to the exit wound. Naruto felt like he would never look at a sewing needle the same way after today. Other than him and his master wanting to exterminate people like me? Nothing in particular, Haku snarked. Now be quiet, I need to make sure this ice is solid so you don't bleed out. Though Haku soon regretted her outburst when she saw the hurt look in Naruto's eyes. Sighing, Haku, temporarily, cut off the flow of chakra to her hands as she snaked her arms around Naruto's torso and drew him into a hug. I'm sorry for snapping, Naruto-kun, she whispered. It's just Zabuza-sama is precious to me, just like you are precious to me. And the same monster that wants to see me destroyed, hurt you and might be hurting Zabuza right now. The next few minutes were quiet as Haku rested her hands on Naruto's exit wound and finished sealing it. She hoped it would hold for long enough for Naruto to get back to his sensei and team. When she was done, Haku drew Naruto closer to herself, whispering in his ear, Naruto, I need you to take your sensei's advice. Run. Run, and don't look back. Before Naruto could respond, she silenced him with a kiss. The kiss was sweet, and all too short. It was a goodbye. Haku released Naruto, spun on her heel and rushed towards the window, making sure to pick up a pack filled with saban on her way. She needed to help Zabuza. Wait. Naruto reached out with his left hand, running after Haku when he was struck by a wave of memories from the clone he left with Kakashi, the onslaught of memories bringing him to his knees as he held his head pain. It took him a moment to process the memories, but when he did, he was pissed. What the hell, Jiraiya, old toads? Old toads who know who my father is. The feeling Naruto had felt earlier, the one bubbling underneath his skin, started to grow. It felt like liquid fire was running through his veins as a storm of emotions raged inside his mind. Confusion about his relationship with Haku, was any of it real, and how some old toad seemed to know who his dad was. Sadness about Haku's goodbye kiss. And finally, anger. Lots of anger. Anger about how the people close to him have been keeping secrets from him. Haku, Kakashi, the Hokage, who else knew about his heritage? And anger about the fucker who put a goddamn hole in his shoulder. Naruto felt his canines begin to grow, his nails lengthen and sharpen, the ice on his shoulder steaming and cracking, the mangled flesh that was his shoulder sizzling and itching, as red chakra began to push out bloody pieces of bone, all the while a red haze overtook Naruto's vision. He wanted to hurt something. He wanted to kill something. And he had just the target in mind. The ice on Naruto's shoulder shattered into millions of pieces as he rushed out the window, his violet eyes teeming with bloodlust. So consumed by his rage, Naruto did not notice the dark chuckles that echoed out from the back of his mind. Scene change. When Haku leapt out of the window, the first thing she noticed was the thick mist surrounding the area, a mist that was heavily laced with chakra. Under normal circumstances, such a sight would put her at ease, because it meant that Zabuza was alive and was maintaining his Kirigakyu no Jutsu, hidden mist technique, but these were far from normal circumstances. Her master was fighting one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist, without his chakra. Haku landed on the ground and immediately felt something was off. The ground was upturned, like something buried had been dragged to the surface. Taking a deep breath, while channeling a bit of wind chakra to her lungs, Haku exhaled and dispersed a bit of the surrounding mist so she could see clearly, and she did not like what she found. Broken razor wire, punctured trees, and a broken slab of Kubikuribocho missing its handle and a third of its blade. The signs of battle went deeper into the woods. Remembering her training, Haku took a deep breath to calm herself and then leapt into the trees, making sure to maintain her stealth, as well as keeping an eye out for any traps. Mainly wires. Haku traveled for a couple hundred meters before she heard grunts of pain, followed by crazed laughter, a bad sign. Haku leapt down to the forest floor and ghosted in between the trees, the sounds of laughter growing more manic and the grunts of pain softening as she crept closer to their source. Peeking out from behind a tree, Haku had to bite her lip from screaming out in rage, and giving away her position. Zabuza was strung up to a tree, arms outstretched, Kubikuribocho's remaining third laying by his feet, his clothes tattered and stained with blood, all the while Kushimaru stood in front of him, cackling. "Come on, Zabuchan, is this the best you've got?" Kushimaru twitched the finger of his right hand to tighten the wires wrapped around Zabuza's right bicep, drawing blood and a weak grunt from his prey. "I thought you were going to feed Kubikuribocho my blood, though it looks like only Nobari is feasting tonight." Haku reached into her pack and grabbed 4 senbon. She placed 3 senbon in between the digits of her right hand, acting as makeshift claws, while she held the last senbon in her left hand in a throwing position. Ready, she threw her single senbon at Kushimaru, aiming for his right elbow joint, the 6 inches of steel seeking to bury itself deep into the madman's bone and hopefully sever the arm's ligament. Yet Haku wasn't finished, for as her senbon was flying she used her now free hand to form the bird seal as she inhaled and channeled chakra to her lungs. The senbon pierced Kushimaru's elbow, eliciting a yelp of pain that was soon cut off by that Kushimaru dispelling into a puddle of water, a Mizu Bunshin, water clone. Sensing a presence behind her, Haku spun on heel, wind release, air bullets, and spat multiple bullets of air at Kushimaru, who had Nubari pulled back in his right hand, poised to thrust through Haku's spine. The air bullets ripped through Kushimaru like paper, and continued on to tear chunks out of the trees surrounding them. Sadly, instead of dripping blood, this Kushimaru dripped water, another water clone. Having sustained enough damage, this clone also dispelled into a puddle of water, this one near her feet, just what Haku needed as she rapidly went through one-handed seals. "Kakik! Die, mutant!" Kushimaru cackled from above Haku as he dove towards her, Nobari held right between his legs, seeking to impale her skull. Though he quickly had to scrunch into a ball to protect his vitals when Haku finished her hand seals, stomped on the puddle with her left foot, and sent thousands of water needles rocketing towards him. Sensatsu Susho, 1,000 needles of death. Kushimaru's forearms and shins were peppered by razor-sharp, blue needles. He didn't know whether to be grateful or angered that the bloodline freak leapt away before his falling body could crush hers. Though the 2 extra senbon she threw into his left elbow as he was rolling away quickly made his mind up for him. "You bitch!" Kushimaru snarled as he stood up, his left arm limp. "Gato will be getting you with less limbs." Kushimaru flexed his left arm to see if he could move it, only to hiss in pain when he felt the metal needles grinding against his bones. If the girl wasn't a mutant he would have been impressed. Deadly accuracy with senbon, seamless use of 2 different releases and capable of using one-handed seals. Zabuza had trained his little pet well, and now Kushimaru's only chance was to stall, hoping that the single water clone he left to maintain his Kirigakure no Jutsu, hidden miss technique, heard his yell of pain and was moving to intercept. What he wouldn't give for some divine intervention right about now. "When I'm finished with you, I will have Gato's head," Haku stated coldly, tightening her grip on her senbon claws, as she channeled some wind chakra through them, increasing their cutting power, and their reach by 4 inches. More than enough to separate Kushimaru's head from his shoulders. Kushimaru mentally cursed. From the look in the girl's eyes, she wasn't in the mood for talking. That remains to be seen. Kushimaru held Nobari by its wire and began twirling the blade as he channeled his chakra through it, the sewing needle quickly becoming a blur as it kicked up dirt, grass, small rocks and branches, the mist surrounding them being blown away. Just as both shinobi were going to launch themselves at one another, a wave of malevolence overwhelmed them, freezing them both. Haku had never felt such a thing before, the suffocating bloodlust that constricted your throat, making it hard to breathe. Not even Zabuza-sama on his worst day could match such an output. She lost focus for a second, and that second cost her. Because, unfortunately for her, Kushimaru was familiar with this type of bloodlust, the bloodlust that only a Biju or their Jinchuriki could produce. Kushimaru prayed to the heavens and got a demon instead, though he could work with that. Kushimaru seized on Haku's lapse of focus and threw Nobari just over her left shoulder, the wind pressure cutting Haku's cheek and severing strands of her raven hair. The pain brought Haku back to her current situation, yet before she could retaliate Kushimaru had already begun to weave his web. Nobari was caught by Kushimaru's water clone, who promptly threw it by Haku's right and to his original, who caught it and threw it right back to his clone. The two Kushimaru were blurs of motion as they threw Nuabari back and forth over a dozen times to one another, wrapping up Haku in a cocoon of razor wire, causing her to lose her balance and fall, face first, to the ground. Haku knew better than to struggle, otherwise the wire would slice her to ribbons, though that didn't stop her from sending the most vicious glare she could muster at the sewing sadist. Kikik, Kushimaru walked up to the captured Haku, handing Nuabari to his water clone and giving him a hand signal that meant, provide overwatch. The clone nodded, and leapt up into the trees above them, disappearing. Kushimaru looked down at his prize, and proceeded to grind Haku's face into the dirt with his foot. Nice try, freak. But the only head from Gato you'll be getting is his lower one. Now Kushimaru turned towards the source of malevolence which had just appeared from behind a tree, the blonde, Konoha Genin from Zabuza's hideout. What's Konoha doing with a Jinchuriki? I thought your yandame killed your Biju. Let go of her. Naruto barked, his voice gravelly and rough, his eyes a red tinge violet, rather than their usual blue. Naruto looked positively feral. A sight that surprised Haku. Naruto? She whispered, her eyes wide with shock at the boy's current appearance. Then, what Kushimaru said finally registered in her mind. Jinchuriki? Is Naruto like the Mizukage? A flower of doubt began to bloom within Haku's chest at that thought, one that she quickly smothered. Naruto was not the Mizukage. He was the boy she fell in love with. And why would I do that, brat? And why do you care anyway? Didn't Zabuza and this Kushimaru stamped his foot on Haku's head, drawing a growl from the boy thing, trick you into meeting with them? I don't care, just let her go. Naruto's eyes flickered red and gained a slit for a split second before returning to their violet state, though they also flickered with something else, doubt. It happened so fast that most would have missed it, but Kushimaru was one of the most accomplished shinobi alive, and you didn't live as long as he did without being observant, and by seizing on those observations. And Kushimaru did just that. Are you not a Jinchuriki? Are you not used to being used, boy? Kushimaru tilted his head as he observed the boy. The boy's eyes held anger, but the doubt Kushimaru saw had returned, this time stronger. What do you mean? Naruto's eyes flicked between Kushimaru and Haku. Haku, the girl he had met in the forest, the girl who teased him, brought him lunch, and always smiled when she saw him. The girl whose eyes brightened when she saw him, the girl who was Zabuza's apprentice. The girl who tricked him. Haku struggled against the wire, knocking off Kushimaru's foot and earning cuts over her body in the process, but she didn't care. Don't listen to him. We never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to hurt you. Then why lure him to your hideout, away from his sensei? Why not meet in a neutral location? Why the secrecy? Kushimaru cut off Haku, with cold hard logic, as he observed the boy, watching as more doubt crept into his eyes. You're a Jinchuriki. Holder of the QB, correct? Kushimaru stated bluntly, as he watched for the boy's reaction, and he wasn't disappointed. Naruto flinched and gave a reluctant nod, a reflex that told Kushimaru more about the boy's insecurities than his words ever could. Kushimaru knew how he would attack the boy, his humanity. Then you, more than any other shinobi, should understand, you are a tool. That's not true. Naruto denied as he swiped furiously at the air, as if he could knock down Kushimaru's words. I am Uzumaki Naruto, I'm the Jinchuriki of the Kyubi no Yoko. Kushimaru finished for the boy, watching as the boy flinched again, his eyes slowly turning from violet to blue, the malevolent aura he produced slowly fading as the anger that fueled it was banked by sadness. You house one of the greatest masses of destruction the world has ever seen. You are a weapon, a deterrent, a tool, and that is all the world will see you as. Naruto had tears in his eyes, which had returned to their normal blue. That's not true, Gigi. I don't know who your Gigi is, kid. Kushimaru cut him off, but I wouldn't put it past your Hokage to pay someone to make you happy and love your village. Kushimaru smirked behind his mask as he saw the boy drop his fighting stance and begin to shrink into himself. Just a little more and the boy would be completely broken. Kushimaru sent a discreet hand signal to his water clone to be ready to go. Kushimaru wanted to bask in the boy's growing despair. Nothing was sweeter to him than breaking a prey down to the point that they welcomed death. That's not true, Naruto began but was cut off by Kushimaru once again. He loves me. Is that what you were going to say? Kushimaru shook his head as he gave the boy a resigned sigh. You are valued for what you are, a Jinchuriki. You are your village's greatest weapon, a Jinchuriki. That is all you are and all you ever will be, and no one could ever love a tool. Naruto fell to his knees, his eyes blank as tears streamed down his face. The world seemed to be getting darker. Was that all he was, a weapon, a tool? Did his Gigi only love him because of what he held? Is that why they wouldn't tell him who his father was? To keep him reliant on them? Just when Naruto's world was about to sink into the darkness of despair, A single voice pierced through the veil of his depression. It was warm and soft as silk. You are Uzumaki Naruto, future Hokage of Konohagakure no Sato, and I love you! Haku cried out. You love me? Light began returning to Naruto's world as he turned towards its source and saw Haku. Haku, who, even under the heel of Kushimaru, was sending him the same smile that never failed to set his heart at ease and make him feel warm inside. Naruto looked into her eyes, those warm chocolate brown orbs that shone with love. Yes, I love you, Uzumaki Naruto, and that's why I want you to run. Please save yourself, Haku begged, as she ignored the feeling of her warm blood soaking into her kimono. Kakik, Kushimaru cackled, I'm afraid I can't let that happen. It's not every day you've got the opportunity to cripple one of the big five. Kushimaru gave the signal to his clone. Haku's eyes were filled with fear as she watched Kushimaru's clone descend from on high, Nobari poised to drive through Naruto's skull. Just when all hope seemed lost, a pink, bumpy whip lashed out from the trees above the water clone, wrapping it up and stopping its murderous descent. What? Naruto fell on his ass and crawled backwards from under the trapped water clone. What? Haku stopped her struggling and stared at the pink whip that had saved her boyfriend. She shuddered when she realized that the whip was actually a tongue. A tongue with a mouth on it. Kushimaru was silent. Though if one could see behind his mask, they would find a face that was a rictus of fury. An expression which deepened as he watched the tongue secrete a white liquid that made his water clone's skin bubble and roil until finally causing it to explode into a shower of boiling water, leaving Nuabari to fall and stab itself into the ground. The tongue retracted into the canopy with a wet slurp, causing the leaves to rustle. Needles are for sewing, not for stabbing, the voice of an elderly woman chided. A black blur jumped down from the canopy, landing in front of Naruto and right next to Nuabari. Shima, one of the two great toad sages of Mount Myoboku, had entered the battle. I'll be hanging on to this for ya, she said as she picked up Nuabari and rested it on her shoulder. This'll help me make a new vest for Bunta-chan. The forest was silent as the three shinobi stared at the toad, Naruto, in stunned confusion, Haku, in relief, and Kushimaru, in quiet fury. Naruto was the first to break the silence. You're the toad who was with that old man, Jiraiya, right? Naruto asked as he slowly got up and into a fighting stance, keeping his eyes trained on the man that had nearly shisbabed him. Naruto swore he saw the man tense when Jiraiya's name left his lips. Yes, Naruto-chan, my name is Shima, but you can call me Ma, the elderly toad answered kindly, as she, too, kept her eyes, as well as her sage senses, trained on the Kiri shinobi, waiting to see what his next move would be. Her eyes darted to the bound Haku and began to take in air and store it in the yellow sacs on her cheeks. Meanwhile, Kushimaru's mind was racing. How dare that toad lay its slimy hands on my Nuabari? When I get my hands on it, I'll string it up by its intestines. Unconsciously, Kushimaru tensed his arms, shifting the ice needles buried in his forearms, sending shooting pains through his body, and breaking the red haze settling over his eyes. Kushimaru took a breath and mentally assessed his situation. The toad summon has my sword, and they mentioned Jiraiya, so it's safe to assume that he's on his way, but why is he here? The Kiri shinobi glanced at the boy. Is it for the brat? Is Konoha so protective of their Jinchuriki that they have their last Sannin trailing him? Kushimaru mentally shook his head and reviewed his injuries, specifically, the two Senbon embedded in his left elbow. Even now, his left arm hung limply at his side, though he could still move his fingers. Regardless, I'm in no condition to fight Jiraiya, the man glared at the cause of his wounds, nor bring Gato his cock sleeve. He resisted the urge to lift his foot and drive it through Haku's skull, though that didn't stop him from pressing down with his foot and grinding her head into the dirt. It does no good to kill your meat shield, but that doesn't mean you can't tenderize it. Hey! Stop that! Naruto roared, his eyes flashing red as he stepped forward, only to be stopped suddenly. What? He looked down to find a small purple hand gripping his pant leg. Old toad? Don't. He'll get what he deserves soon, Shima stated firmly, her yellow eyes narrowing at Kushimaru. Her yellow vocal sacs had expanded to the size of golf balls. And what do I deserve? A mansion in Tsuki no Kuni? Kushimaru joked as he looked up and continued to grind Haku's head into the dirt, receiving small grunts of pain for his efforts. This is the least you deserve, you little mutant. If you hadn't interfered, Zabuza would be dead. Speaking of, his eyes flicked to the right where he could see Zabuza, still tied to a tree with Kubikuribocho lying broken at his feet, the once mighty weapon now nothing more than its handle and a foot of blade. I need to recover Kubikuribocho and finish him off. Kushimaru focused on Nobari, and I might have to leave Nobari behind, something that would make Yandame-sama furious. Especially leaving it in an enemy village's possession. Kushimaru repressed a shudder at the thought. No, you deserve a good spanking. Shima barked, now get your foot off the girl and get before you get one. Kushimaru cocked his head, curious, as he stopped grinding Haku's face into the dirt. And why do you care? This little freak, Kushimaru gave Haku a light stomp and jabbed his right thumb towards Zabuza, is the accomplice of a Kiri missing Nin, making this a Kiri matter. Kushimaru lowered his arm, resting his right hand on the two Senban in his elbow as he gauged the distance between him and Zabuza, about 50 yards. Shima saw Kushimaru's hand on the Senban and tightened her grip on Naruto's pant leg. When tadpoles are in danger, I make it my matter. So Konoha would risk war over the lives of two criminals? Kushimaru shook his head as he plucked the Senban out of his elbow in a spurt of blood. He kept the needles in his hand as he began channeling chakra to his legs. Too far for a guaranteed kill shot. Distraction it is. No, Jiraiya wouldn't risk war over that, Shima began, raising her voice over Naruto's protest of Old Toad. Though Kiri isn't in the position to wage war now, nor in a few years. Now you best leave before Jiraiya gets here, Shima finished by sending a smirk that dripped with smug confidence toward the swordsman. A confidence she didn't feel as she sensed the buildup of Kushimaru's chakra, but not the approaching signatures of her husband and Jiraiya. Where are those two? Perhaps not, Kushimaru said as he raised the Senban to his face, watching drops of his blood slide down the metal to stain his fingertips. But who's to say Kiri will stand alone? It wouldn't be the first time that Kiri has had help in destroying another nation. Kushimaru took notice of Shima's bulging cheeks. Wind technique? Water? Probably not an area of effect. Something precise. Kushimaru looked down towards his captive, something that won't hit the mutant. Kumo and IWA, Shima spat as she flared her chakra and glared at the madman. Hurry up, Pa, she thought. Kushimaru shrugged off the look as he slipped the Senban between his fingers. Kumo, IWA, or maybe some of the smaller villages. Konoha is the top dog, and a pack of underdogs will always be waiting to throttle you. Though you can avoid that, Kushimaru trailed off, leaving the thought dangling there like a baited hook waiting for a bite as he continued planning. But what's my follow-up? Kushimaru studied Shima's stance and saw her hand grasping the Jinchuriki's pant leg. That will work. Shima saw the ploy for what it was but decided to bite to keep the man talking and buy more time. And how could we do that? By letting you go? She asked, ignoring Naruto's protests, as she kept her sage senses honed on the man's chakra to predict his next move. Her eyes flicked to the left, seeing the only cover available for Naruto was some bushes near Zabuza. No, she scolded herself. I'm not throwing a tadpole near a wounded toad when there's a stork. And Shima cut off her thought when she felt Jiraiya's and Fukasaku's chakra rapidly move towards them from Zabuza's direction. Yes, she cheered, about time, you old coots. Kushimaru began kneading chakra in his stomach. That, and allowing me to complete my mission. Then we can go our separate ways without further bloodshed. I'll even tell my Kaga that Konoha helped eliminate Zabuza and capture his apprentice. I assure you that Yandame-sama repays his debts handsomely. Kushimaru finished his offer, lowering his right hand and rolling his wrist. No! Haku yelled as she struggled against Kushimaru's foot, twisting her neck left and right, thrashing her body, feeling new cuts open up on her body as the razor wire sliced into her. You can't let him kill Zabuza-sama. Quiet, Kushimaru growled as he pushed down on her head. You'll get yours soon, he thought darkly. And what about the girl? What happens to her? Shima asked, sensing Fukasaku's chakra flare twice. 2 minutes. It would be serving a new role for one of Kiri's allies, he answered as he curled his left hand's pinky and ring fingers, followed by straightening his index and middle fingers, a half-rat seal. How about a trade? Your sword, she waved Nuabari as she kept her eyes trained on the two Senban, for the girl? This doesn't have to be messy. Shima felt her husband repeatedly flare his chakra. 1 minute. Kushimaru smiled behind his mask as he puffed out his chest, stepped off Haku, and walked a couple of feet to his left. I'm a proud shinobi from the village of the Bloody Mist. I love it when things get messy. Kushimaru tilted his head, an innocuous action that sent the toad and swordsman into a flurry of motion. Kushimaru flicked his wrist, sending the two Senban toward the back of Haku's skull as he pushed off the ground and charged the toad and boy, feeling a burst of wind brush past him as he slid his mask to the right, revealing a pale mouth. With great pain, he raised his left hand to his lips. Suetun, Suede and no jutsu, water style, water bomb technique, he thought as he fired a high-pressure stream from his lips and towards Shima and Naruto. The toad saged through Naruto into the bushes as she blew a strong gust of air over Haku's head, deflecting the Senban and sending the girl tumbling away, just before Shima was tumbled away by the deluge of water from Kushimaru's jutsu and crashing through a tree. However, she kept a hold of Nuabari. Kushimaru smirked as he sent the toad crashing through the forest. He ended the jutsu and let his left arm fall limp, feeling nothing. Still, he didn't dwell on it as he placed his mask back, pivoted to his right, and turned towards Zabuza's location, only to see a dissipating cloud of chakra smoke and 13 Narutos standing next to the bound demon. One of them went over to Kubikuribocho, picked up the broken blade, pointed it at Kushimaru, and yelled, "Charge!" 5 clones followed the order. "This brat," Kushimaru snarled as he met the charge head-on. He dispelled the first clone with a right jab to its throat and the second with a knee to its gut. The third and fourth clones rushed him from his right and left sides with their fists cocked back. Kushimaru scoffed as he swayed to his right, grabbed the right clone's collar, and threw him into the left clone, dispelling both in a large cloud of smoke, which the fifth clone used as cover for a slide tackle aimed at the Kirinin's ankles. But the veteran shinobi lightly hopped over the clone, avoiding the attack and using its head as a stepping stone to propel him into the air and towards Zabuza and the 8 remaining Narutos. "Get him!" Clones 6 through 8 yelled as they launched their brethren into the air to ground the soaring madman. Kushimaru saw the incoming clones and made his right arm go limp as he channeled chakra through both arms and spun quickly in the air, using his arms as whips to flay clones, the ice needles in the swordsman's forearms adding to his lethality. Something that the launcher clones soon learned when Kushimaru landed in between them, spun, and turned them all to vapor, leaving only 2 Narutos standing between him and Zabuza. The armed Naruto raised the broken blade above his head, a battle cry halfway out of his lips, when he was backhanded and dispelled, leaving Kubikuribocho to fall to the ground, only for its plummet to be halted by the hand of Kushimaru. Kushimaru twirled the blade as he stepped up to Naruto, who stood right before Zabuza, both glaring defiantly at him. "Any last words, brat Zabuza? And keep in mind I'm on a schedule," Kushimaru said. Lu, they both started to speak when Kushimaru cut them off. "Sorry, I'm out of time. Why don't you tell it to the Shinigami?" Kushimaru cackled as he thrust the blade forward, aiming to stab through Naruto's skull and gut Zabuza. Only for Kubikuribocho to explode in a puff of white smoke as he felt his right arm placed into an armbar, and his fingers snapped. His mind didn't even have time to process the pain because his instincts screamed at him to move when he heard a rustling above him and saw another Naruto dropping down with Kubikuribocho ready to cut him in half. Kushimaru hastily sent an overpowering burst of chakra through his right arm, overloading the chakra network and exploding the tenketsu in his arm. Still, it was enough to allow him to bend and raise his limb to have the leech on it take some of the blow as Kushimaru stepped back, feeling the tip of the broken blade score his mask before he felt it slice through his forearm and his ulna bone, his vision bleeding red. Naruto landed in a crouch, his eyes crimson and slit, his blonde dripping with Kushimaru's blood, as he reared Kubikuribocho back to thrust it through the man's black heart. "This is for dash," he began to yell when he was cut off by a knee to the face and was thrown into the bound Zabuza, the back of his head striking the missing Nin's stomach, causing the bound demon to cough up blood and begin an extended inspection of the inside of his eyelids. Naruto's vision darkened. He did not see Kushimaru's foot, emblazoned in a blue chakra shroud, racing for his face. Though he did hear, oddly enough, the clop of a wooden sandal as he slipped into unconsciousness. A loud boom was heard, sending a shockwave through the forest that shook the trees and sent all its nocturnal residents fleeing. At the shockwave's epicenter was Jiraiya, wearing his usual mixture of kabuki and shinobi garb, with the unusual addition of a bulbous, warty nose, toad-like eyes, and a green toad with a mohawk riding on his right shoulder. Kushimaru wasn't in the right state of mind to comment on the Sanin's new additions as his right foot was currently in Jiraiya's right hand in a grip that could crush steel. Kushimaru knew this because he felt like all of the bones in his foot were powderized. Before Kushimaru could beg, fight or scream, Jiraiya pulled back on the captured leg, causing the wielder of Nuabari to stumble forward as the Sanin straightened out the limb and brought his left elbow down on the kneecap. A vicious snap was heard, sounding like a breaking branch as the bones, cartilage, and tendons in Kushimaru's knee ceased to exist. Though Jiraiya wasn't finished as he channeled Katan chakra to his left hand, causing it to be engulfed in a fiery blaze. "Can have you bleeding out, Kuririn," Jiraiya growled, a vicious gleam in his eyes as he seared shut the wound on Kushimaru's right arm. "You have a lot to answer for." The pain, being too much for him, sent Kushimaru into the blissful land of unconsciousness. Jiraiya released Kushimaru, letting the man crumple to the ground. He dug into his vest and pulled out a spool of ninja wire and the seal he had made for Naruto. He placed the seal on the swordsman's chest, his eyes lighting with satisfaction when he saw the seal glow blue, signifying a good seal. "Pa, can you sense any other hostiles in the area?" Jiraiya asked as he began tying up their prisoner. Fukasaku closed his eyes and threw out his senses. "What took you two so long?" Shima shrieked as she hopped up with an awake and silent Haku in her arms and Nuabari on her back. Haku's brown eyes focused on the forms of Naruto and Zabuza, tears of relief and joy streaming down her dirty and bruised cheeks as she saw they were bloody but breathing. Fukasaku winced. I sense a hostile, and I'm married to her, he said weakly. What did you say? Shima barked. Fukasaku's shoulders slumped as he hopped off Jiraiya's shoulder, ending the Sanin's sage mode. Nothing, dear, he muttered as he landed on the ground. That's what I thought, Shima smirked as she placed the girl down and turned to Jiraiya. And to answer your question, no, there's no more hostiles in the area. She then hopped over to Naruto and Zabuza to begin administering medical aid. Jiraiya let out a sigh of relief as he finished securing Kushimaru. That's good, and thank you for your help, Shima-sama, Fukasaku-sama, he said, looking both toads in the eye as he addressed them. I shudder to think what would have happened without your help. Don't mention it, Jiraiya Boyle, Fukusaka said as he looked over at the unconscious Naruto being tended to by his wife. That boy's family. Even if he doesn't know it yet. I know, Jiraiya said fondly as he gazed at Naruto. What are the chances? You're telling him, Jiraiya. Everything, Fukusaka cut him off as he hopped over to catch Zabuza when his wife ripped the wire. Damn it, Jiraiya cursed under his breath as he walked over to the bound Haku and sat down cross-legged, drawing the girl's attention. Miss, would you care to tell me who you are and why I had to save my godson from Kiri's last loyal swordsman? He asked politely, but Haku could hear the steel hidden behind his words.